Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening. Today we're going to touch on some topics. We will later on touch back on the Anunnaki topic, but we felt we had some pressing issues to cover, including but not least, including but not, um, I lost my train of thought, including are Africans speaking out against FBA children? Team, family. I'm seeing fucking videos of Africans coming up and defending that the dude who got stabbed by our brother Carmelo Anthony. I can't believe what I'm seeing, but when you look at history, you understand what you're looking at. Our brother Tariq Nasheed has a good video of this African woman up here talking about uh black Americans are lazy and white Americans do they are being victims. He shouldn't have stabbed him. Why are they defending these people? Does it have something to do with the white Jesus mantra in West Africa? We're gonna dive head deep into that shit. And lastly but not least, we're gonna look at what England did the other day. Ladies and gentlemen, England actually stood for the truth. The other day, England Supreme Court ruled that a woman is defined by biological sex. Under England's new country's equity law, transgender women are excluded. Wow, isn't that amazing? I mean, that's like common sense to us, but during the last administration, rhetoric was passed on to our children that you could just wake up one day and decide you're a woman. No disrespect to anybody's lifestyle. No disrespect. I'm not a bigot or hateful, but I'm a scientist. I'm a social scientist. And it's very dangerous when you play around with imagination and science. Science needs to be what we call Boolean, true, false, open, close. It is or it isn't. So I'm really happy with England's ruling. Not to disrespect anybody's lifestyle, don't get me wrong, but it's just fact. You're either a woman or a man. It's either or. We're gonna dive head deep into that. But let's look at it. Let's look at this. Wani, why are Africans speaking out against our goddamn children?
It seems that's a hobby for them, abusing children, going against us in our country. This is an example of why we have to delineate. People can't get these messages confused. Some of our people may not recognize who's talking sometimes. Sometimes they're very obvious. They look like Africans, they sound like Africans, but we are not the same group. We don't have the same politics and we certainly don't have the same backgrounds. So they can't speak on our behalf. And we've done a very good job of showing the voting public and white Americans specifically that these Africans speaking out are not us. I think we really ran Emmanuel Ocho out the paint. He had his mouth flapping, talking about how we get along with the police. He should be worried about how they get along with SARS, which just basically waits for an African to drive down the streets and blows their head off. They don't get pulled over for a violation. They don't get to that point. So I think that we've done a pretty good job, especially Kamala. Her run for the president was a blessing. It was painful, but it was a blessing because we got to clearly define that this bimbo has nothing to do with our background. And so as they raise their voices up loud and make spectacles of themselves, they only single themselves out as idiots. They go against what we want politically, and it only turns everybody further against them, doesn't want them to immigrate here, wants them to be deported, shows the whole world that they're not part of our group. So they can just keep flapping their dumb lips till they're blue in the face. They're doing my job for me. Hello.
Professor, you're on mute.
I'm sitting up here talking through a dang mute. Yeah, I was putting something in the jumbotron. I couldn't access the mute, but I have um, a piece of evidence in the jumbotron to support what we're talking about. And I say Africans have a long history of selling black children to Arabs and Europeans. I just want to let you know. African tribal chiefs have no history of protecting children. I think our sister Wani kind of brought that up a little bit and woke it up. If you look at the piece of evidence I put in the jumbotron, West African tribal chiefs have a long history, according to Dr. Claude Anderson. West African tribal chiefs have a long history of exchanging slaves with Arab traders. Most of these slaves were children. Eventually, they expanded their practice to European traders. As an important trading custom of the African tribal chiefs was to insist that all foreign traders purchase some of the chief's personal slaves in order to demonstrate an act of good faith in bargaining. Can y'all believe that shit?
What were they thinking? How
Fuck
is
these
selling
people.
your population bargaining? W- Why don't they have value for themselves? I don't understand it. How do they even have the massive amounts of population that they have with that behavior?
Yeah, we need to know who the motherfucker we dealing with and delineate from these people. Let's stop letting them come to our historically black colleges. Uh, Members of the Divine Nine, stop letting them pledge your shit. These people have no allegiance to you. None. Matter of fact, they were showing off. I'm gonna give you some of my personal slaves. That means they devalue humanhood. Well, they devalue black humanhood. Now, it's different when it's a white person. They'll just drop to their knees and start begging. You know what I'm saying? But just keep in mind, the history erases the mystery. Ladies and gentlemen, this is why history departments are basically infiltrated and under attack all across the United States, from elementary school to secondary ed. Is because, like Dr. James Small says, the history erases the mystery. If we knew back in the 60s that these people had a history of bragging and selling their own personal stock of slaves, which is a lot of them have our genetics, to the European, somebody who didn't care about them and hated them, and to the Arab, somebody who still has them enslaved, we would have known what we were dealing with, and we would have not ran to make an alliance, a faux alliance with these motherfuckers. But I digress. So, black on black enslavement, according to Dr. Claude Anderson, black West African sense of community was narrowly and divisively based on tribal origins rather than that of commonality of black skin color and collective racial destiny. I'm going to put that in Jumbotron shortly, but why did I bring that up? I brought that up because their sense of community, according to Dr. Claude Anderson, has shit to do with genetics. It has to do with what goddamn clique you in. Now, I'm gonna ask Wani, one needs tribal cliques, or whatever you want to call them, entourages. Weren't these tribal groups created by the Europeans?
The tribes, no, the countries were created. The people created their own tribes. I'm pretty sure there's one of the issues is that when they drew a line through certain people's territory, it may have split up some tribes and have caused some tribal beefs. But no, Africans, for the most part, they have divided up into tribes, and like we discussed a couple of days ago, they're actually genetically different than the people that they're saying they're not related to. They have some uh, overlapping marriages, but they are extraordinarily distinct. So, two tribes living next to each other have nothing to do with the Khoisan and the Twa. Khoisan and Twa are dramatically different. In fact, when I showed you that chart, it showed that a white man living in Sweden is more similar to an Aboriginal man, native man in Australia, than two Africans living side by side. Two African tribes living side by side are more different than an Aboriginal in Australia and a Swedish man in Scandinavia. That shows you that they actually are different tribes. And this is what we're not seeing. We don't view uh, people that look alike as different. And that's where we have had to learn. They know something that we don't know. That is why In the Congo, King Leopold's people were able to convince nearby tribes to be the military to kill everybody, to kill those tens of millions of people, cut their hands off for not having enough of what they were trying to get, rubber. So I'm not sure exactly what they were trying to get them to do, but when they failed at doing it, when they didn't make the yields that they expected, they cut their hands off. They may have cut their
Right.
hands off for stealing too, but all of that horrible behavior was based on them not seeing themselves as a group. So they could take one Congolese group and they would slaughter the other one just because a white guy said so. There were not enough white men there to make them do that, but they just eagerly went along with it. Prior to that, they were using people from Sierra Leone, people from Nigeria, putting them in that force publique, which is the Belgian army, and they easily got Nigerians, people from Sierra Leone, other Congolese groups to abuse those people, maybe even have gotten Congolese people from the same tribe to do it. They have a different view about life, and they have a completely different view about everybody brown being the same group. They don't care if the white man is there, they're still going to slaughter because they deeply feel that that is a different group. And they're right, it is a different group. So they were right.
Right. So then that's all fine and good. What Wani said is very clear and true. If I want to support what she just said with Dr. Claude Anderson's statement, according to Dr. Claude Anderson, page 111 of Black Labor, White Wealth, he says, quote, tribal and extended family commitments rarely extended beyond the village compound. So these people are into their own little enclaves. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I saw this in person in West Africa, particularly in Accra. I saw compounds like they had like fucking gated fences, like Jurassic Park. You know, they're protecting themselves from each other because they didn't trust each other. So, what I want to know is how did they come over here and how did we all get gaslighting into thinking we all one big nigga? How did that happen? Was that the government?
Well, Pan-Africanists told us that, and we just went along with it. We were not exposed to them, so we didn't feel the tribalism at that point. We didn't have those problems. So we just made up these fairy tales in our mind that, and of course, it was being fed to us by Pan Africanists that, oh, they all speak Swahili. They wear kufis and dashikis. They have these great families. These are all just things that were made up for us. They didn't care where these things were coming from. Swahili is spoken in East Africa. It didn't matter. The Pan Africanist just was out there just saying anything. Oh, they all wear this kind of clothing. They all do this and that. I noticed they didn't mention anything about food, but then they did because they said, oh, we got all of our food from them, but didn't mention their food. So we got the food from them, but they don't have that food. Okay, got it. They just made up a backstory. Oh, it takes a village to raise a child. They have these strong family units.
No,
We
they don't.
bought it all. They bought it all. We bought all of those Pan African lies. And now we're paying the price for not um, researching it ourselves and believing that we're one group because nobody believes that they're one group. You can see all these definitions and people defining themselves away from other groups nearby.
Right, right, right. Dr. Claude Anderson says West African societies that practiced tribalism had a narrow group identity. We never fitted anywhere near their identity. It's narrow. West African, he says much racial detachment and intergroup animosities. The practice of black on black enslavement made them vulnerable to united ethnocentric groups. That's what Wanting was talking about. That's what it is. That's what made them vulnerable to like the Pan Africanists, because they was killing each other, who were seeking wealth and power at any cost. Weakened from within, West Africa had little basis for developing a broad community capable of uniting against a common enemy. Ladies and gentlemen, we do not need these people as friends. I'm sorry. And I'm gonna say something kind of controversial, but it's backed up by Dr. Robert Greene. Robert Greene in the 33 laws of power, 48 laws of power, I'm sorry, says sometimes you need a good enemy because it keeps you on your toes. It may be better to have these folks as enemies as his friends because they're not even friends with each other. They put our group dynamic in danger. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm gonna ask you to share out the space. If you don't mind, share out the space. And now we're gonna go to Seventh Ward. Educators, Dr. Ward.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So, yeah, the way the Africans, the way they treat children is, I don't know if we have a word in it in the English language to describe how abhorrent
It's
it
it's
can
it's
be.
like fuck them kids. That's what it's
Yeah.
like with them.
Wow.
So I was trying to understand. We don't do that in our culture. We don't do that. No, that's the stuff they do. We wouldn't even conceive of doing something like that. And so I was trying to figure this out. And so over the break, I'm on break from my job, and I had some time off, and I went to the state archives, and I was tracing my family history on my mom's side, because I know my dad's side because he did it before he died, but I did my mom's side, and I found my ancestors on the 1860 census. They were enslaved, and I found them on the 1870 census when they were free. Keep in mind that is, the abuse and trauma that went on the plantations. That's fairly recent in history, in human history, and I think we still remember collectively that pain our ancestors went through, being separated from our families as children, and the trauma that caused. And I think it instilled in us a collective that we got to treat children, we got to treat children right as best we can, because like I said, it's because those are formative years, and that can instill a lot of pain that can carry over into other things. And we still deal with that to some extent, with all the shit we got to go through. But it's not our fault. It's white supremacy. But but that's what I think it is. Because I grew up in a family. I had some hardcore gangsters in my family, and the shit they did, I don't even think you want to know. But but even though I knew them as children, they never hurt me. If someone had hurt one of us, yeah, I mean, they probably wouldn't live very long. But that's what I think it is. I think it's that trauma we went through on the plantations that's really that's really instilled in us to have a to really value our children, and to make sure that they grow up in a worry-free environment as best as we can provide. With that, I yield the mic.
Yeah, that's very true. It was a study done in Cambridge at Harvard years ago, of to try to find out if there are records in DNA, like acoustic records. And they looked at a bird. It was a little bird that lived in the Amazon forest. It was defenseless. It was just walking food. You know what I'm saying? So it got smart and jumped to the top of the trees and started its life up there where it had no natural predators. Lived there for 10,000 years, flourishing without a natural predator. Well, 10,000 years later, or some type of hawk or eagle drifted in that area, and guess what? They got a predator. Well, this bird of prey would dive into the sun and attack new hatchlings out of the sun. I guess it thought that hatchlings were more delicious than the eggs or the big bird. But the last thing the hatchlings would see before their brother or sister got brutally murdered in front of them was that the nest would go dark because the bird flew into the sun. When he was going to attack on approach, or what do they call it, a strafing run or whatever, the nest would go dark. So, grad students and researchers at Harvard got some of the eggs and took them to Cambridge, Massachusetts, in a lab and hatched them, and then put a piece of paper in front of a light to cast darkness on the crate with the hatchlings, and they all freaked out. Now, here gets a question. How in the fuck did they know to be scared? They never been in the Amazon. It was messages passed down in their DNA from their mother. And that's a big part of our problem. We got some messages that we're starting to reconcile and face. I'm very proud to be a part of trying to help us heal, because there are a lot of things in our behavior we're not aware of that's in our DNA that's kind of on automatic. And here goes a kicker: the system of white supremacy they know about this as much, if not more, than we do, and they use it to manipulate us. Like they know all of that hidden trauma and fear that's under the surface. That I'm putting on a tinfoil kufi. I am, but I think that's why every once in a while, FBA, innocent FBA, gets brutally murdered on the news, is to kind of activate us, activate our trauma to get us to do something. Usually right before an election cycle, FBA gets murdered. You know what I'm saying? I think that's a possibility. That could be an intentional mode of manipulation, but I'm just agreeing with what Seventh Ward said. Go ahead, Miss.
Yeah,
Oh, go ahead, Bonnie.
I to agree with what Seven Ward said as well. We do carry a lot of this trauma with us, and we're dealing with people that are traumatized, and it's it's very hard sometime. But when you think about it, a lot of the people coming over here, they literally go to these tourist areas and tell their children, "You go over to the tourist area, turn tricks, or you see the UN, you go over there and try to sell your body to a UN worker." They're not joking. I know UN workers. Okay, I know people in tourism.
They have
They
diplomatic
send
immunity
their
too, so they could rape them.
They do that, but they're sent over. It's like a strange situation where they are rapists, and at the same time, these children are being told to throw themselves at these people all over the world. This has happened in South America. This has happened in the Caribbean. They are told to go to the tourist area and turn tricks. Boys, girls, young and old, doesn't matter. These people are just very horrible to their children. And Africa is a cesspool on this type of thing. The same thing happens in Asia, but not as much that I know of. But people, I mean, we're talking about abuse to children in Bangkok, Thailand, they're doing things to children that I can't even say. I mean, it went from offering toddlers in brothels to something even darker than that. So, the way that people treat children around the world is pretty shocking. We would never say, here's a big line at Motel 6, go in there and have sex with everybody in Motel 6 and bring me back the money. There's no line of Americans doing that, let alone Black Americans. That's not only illegal, but we just collectively feel that children should not be treated that way. Children's rights are something we don't really talk about. Children have had to get rights as we moved along with the women's rights, the right to vote, the right to go to school, and things like that. Children were told to be seen and not heard. Children have been harmed for centuries and never had a voice to say, hey, this adult is doing this to me. I actually worked with an older man who was sexually abused by an adult, and he was crying at 70 years old. This white man at 70 years old was crying because he said he did tell, and everybody said, shut up, how dare you say something so disgusting about this man that visits us on every Saturday. And they didn't care that he was being abused at all. He had so much rage and pain from that. He'll never recover. He's probably dead now. But the point is that we do have standards. In that experience in slavery, we saw the bowels of people being inhumane. We saw everything evil in people. And so that's why a lot of our civil rights are based on humanitarian principles. And we have been huge in humanitarianism because we know what it feels like to not be the beneficiary of human behavior.
Yeah, right on. Now, to put some scholarship to support what our sister Wani just said, look at Dr. Snyder's book, Slavery. in America. Look what Dr. Snyder says. She says the trade not well, she says the trade, she means the slave trade. The trade not only commercialized the economy and changed everyday life of Africans, but it also corrupted them. Stop right there. If I can put back on my tinfoil kufi, I think that right there is what fucked up Africa. Really, the older I get, the more I'm told that everything is really on a spiritual level. Everything operates on a spiritual level. And spiritually, when Africans were selling each other and just bragging, just try to wrap your mind around that. Black Americans bragging about selling their cousins and shit. Man, you can have her, you can have her, you can have her for free, you know. How do you think God felt about that? I think they're suffering a curse from that transatlantic slave trade. That's why they shit is disorganized. That's why they sitting on trillions of dollars worth of goddamn um precious metal and resources and diamonds and cocoa, and they can't organize because they're cursed from that transatlantic trade. Yeah, I said it, and I fucking meant it. I say it in church. I don't care. According to Dr. Snyder, allegedly African kings sold wives whom they were angry. And look at this: African parents sold children who they could not feed. Isn't that wild? I can't feed my daughter, so you know what? I'm a seller. Can y'all wrap your mind around that?
I can't understand. I mean, I know we see pictures of Africans starving, but some of that is that's not a reflection. Africa is abundant in all kinds of food just hanging off of the trees. Come on. You can't
Yeah.
say you can't feed. Now, if you are in a drought area, all of a sudden there's a natural disaster. That's a natural disaster. That's different. But we're not talking about that. We're not talking about people in the desert. We're talking about people in West Africa, right? So why weren't they able to feed their children? Why? It's
Real talk.
abundant. It's abundant there.
Yeah, it's fucking food. The in West African culture for thousands of years, they have goats, and they have them as pets and food, which I can't really wrap my mind around that either. But goats are weird. They have pygmy goats. They're little bitty goats, and they're strange because once they know where home is, they'll just roam freely like eminent domain, just walk around. And the craziest thing to see in Accra is when you're like driving through a busy intersection, people will stop, the traffic will be speeding, and then everybody will stop and a goat to go running across the street. I'm like, how y'all know to wait for the goat? But back to the point, goats, it's go fucking crazy. It's kind of cool though. But anyway, my point is, goats go home at night. They go back to their point of origin. Goats are predictable. So, given that fact, what I just read out of Dr. Snyder's book was about West Africa, where goats are running all across the place. Now, if my daughter was fucking starved and I didn't have no money, you already know what it would be. You'd be like, "Come here, little goat. Come here. Come here. Come here."
Now you said you couldn't understand. Hey, this guy and Mr. AI. Just a second. How they could have pets and then slaughter them. That's another insight into their mindset. It's another insight.
Right, right. Because I'm an animal lover. Y'all probably don't know that, but I love animals. And the pygmy goats are like real pets, and they would have. I was talking to many families and a couple families in Accra, and I was playing with their goats, and they were like, "Yeah," and we were eating. They fed us, the dignitaries eat. We were eating lamb, and I was like, "Where did this come from?" And they're like, "Oh yeah, every once in a while we take one and slaughter it." And I was like, "How can you be friendly with a fucking animal that you're gonna fucking kill? Like, how do you do that?" But
People on farms are trained not to do that. My girlfriend grew up on a farm and they were told not to view certain animals as it wasn't a working farm by the time I came along, but they were trained not to view them as pets.
Well, certain animals they're saying when it calms them down because I don't know why I was just watching a pig slaughtering a video. I didn't watch them slaughter it, but I watched them as they went through the factory, and they would keep them calm because they said that it emits certain hormones when they are fearful, so that they like to
right.
keep, yeah, so they like to keep them calm. And I think with certain types of people, it makes them feel better if they treat them a certain way before they slaughter them.
I guess. I guess.
To add to that, I believe Kobe beef. That's the big thing with that because they like pet
Hey,
the
hey,
cow.
this guy. Hold on one second. Mr. AI was ahead of you, bro.
Oh, my bad, my
You
bad.
good? You good? Go ahead, Mr. AI.
Hey, good evening. I hope you guys are having a good time and everything. I love this discussion and everything else. I had a really interesting discussion about this situation that's going on in Texas. And yesterday, well, actually today, they had this little they had this little rally for Austin Metcalf, but there were nobody there, just a handful of guys. And then there was this one black guy who I checked and found out that he was from the continent of Africa. Not sure if he was in. He looked like he was Eastern African and everything else. And I was having a little discussion with this lady about this white lady about this, and she would ask me, "Why would a black person attend an event like that?" I explained to her, "Well, you know, check. Well, his background. He came from West East Africa or something like that. One of them African nations, or came from a non FBA foreign background, and many of those people are accept or are more likely to be wanting to be a part of white supremacy and everything because they got a lot of self hatred in them and everything, especially in place in Africa and everything. We have all that tribal differences that's going on right now, and many of them clash each other and just slaughter each other and everything else. And she explained to me that, I wonder if this has to do with when Pope Nicholas V sent all his missionaries to Africa with the purpose of one, enslaving them, and number two, trying to do all that missionary and everything because part of Easter she was telling me is about trying to convert or enslave them people into their way of life, their religion, and everything. I mean, she was very. I mean, she was very. I don't want to say she was anti-religious and everything else. She used to be a religious person, but she's read books. I think she's going to start writing books about how about religion and white supremacy. This is a white lady, here in my hometown and everything that's talking about this and everything. And she's thinking about writing. She's actually in the process of writing a book about it, about how religion and white supremacy has done a lot of harm to indigenous people here globally. And again, we were talking about that one black person in there, and she is trying to tie in the possibility that when the Pope Nicholas V back in 1550 or
It
1552,
was neither. It was
Professor.
he was cardinal. Let's see, until 1440.
No, 14. Yeah, I meant to say 1450, between 1450 and 1452.
Yeah.
It was around. It was during around Easter time too, I
Well,
believe.
you have to think about it. And for Pope Nicholas V was around the same time where Pope Innocent, I think the second, Pope Innocent doomed blacks to African people to slavery in 1402. So that was a new finesse, ladies and gentlemen. It had nothing to do with God or these motherfuckers are just lying. It had nothing to do with that. It was
Yeah,
Pope Innocence decided, ooh shit, we can enslave these niggas and they can't run away because they don't look like
Oh,
us.
that's
So
deep.
yeah,
yeah,
and let me tell you, you
yeah.
want to see the fucked up part about it?
And yeah,
the
because
the
yeah,
fuck the fuck
we were
the
having a
fucked up part,
discussion
hold
tonight
on, the
about it.
fucked up part about it is Nikki, Pope Innocent II would not have known about African people, but for some dumbass tribal African. When fucking the Spanish went to Africa, they were looking for it. king named Prester John. And Prester John was said to give money and gold to Christians. If you said you're a Christian, he'd give you what you want. And Spain was in a war with each other. The Europeans were fucking killing each other. So they were looking for Prester John and found a fucking lying ass African who said he was Prester John. Prester John had been dead for 100 years. And to show off and
So these
pretend like he
Africans
was,
be walking around lying and taking other people's identity. Is that? Are you
yeah,
saying that they do that?
that's what it's
Yeah.
never stopped. He said, I'm Presto John, and I give you some of my slaves. So this motherfucking dumbass gave him some slaves, which they took back to Pope Innocent, and Pope Innocent said, "Ooh, damn, this is a great idea. Black people can't run away because the Europeans enslaved they fucking self. People don't understand that, and European slaves would run away. Matter of fact, the word slave comes from Slav, Slavic, Slovenia. Yeah,
Rob.
it.
Rob.
Yeah,
Yes.
Yeah.
Europeans. They're the original slaves, but it got put on us because a dumbass tribal gave away some of his servants to show off. He fucked us all up with that shit.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I was reading about Pope Nicholas V and everything, and we were doing research tonight because she's in the process of writing a book about religion and white supremacy and how it's corrupted, the entire planet and everything, how it's corrupted and how it's destroyed indigenous people and everything else.
Yeah, yeah, that's very true. Appreciate.
And when we were all, one more thing too, when we were talking about this issue with this one black person who was at that rally and everything else, it was just a little round table. We were talking about it. This lady said, this one lady was asking about that, and I said, well, you gotta check his background. It has a lot to do with where he came from, because most black folks here in the United States, foundational black Americans, would not be a part of something like that at all. It's only people who are from non FBA lineage that would do something like that.
Right, right.
You
We
see why
have.
we delineate. This is why, because we get
Yeah,
blamed for things that we don't even have anything to do with. That's interesting that you brought that up today.
exactly. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. So I look forward. I look forward when the book comes out and everything. She says it's going to take maybe a year or two to do her research.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, keep us informed. I want to say something uh,
I
real
would.
quick about Austin Metcalf because y'all brought him up a minute ago. Do y'all know that his dad is speaking out? Suspected white supremacists are holding signs saying immediate death to all schemes and propaganda that harm the white race. They're using this situation to support the system of white supremacy. And I think earlier today, the young man who got lost his life, his dad spoke out and he said, quote, "Sir, you're part of the fucking problem. You're not the solution. I don't want anything to do with you." And Austin Metcalf's dad he's demanded that Lang removes that they move photos of his son to protect white Americans' website. Isn't that interesting how the system of white supremacy is crumbling on itself?
Don't kill that guy. They're vicious. They do more killings on each other for not being hardcore enough within that, I guess you could say, white supremacy, white nationalists. They're in jail mass numbers,
Wow.
beating their own
Yes,
people up.
yes. They will kill their
Their
own
own
people. They
wives,
will kill their
kids that
own if
don't
you're not.
go along, cousins, rival groups, other people that they are murderous.
Yeah. And we
Yeah, they will kill their own
that
people for if you're not a hardcore white supremacist. And besides the hardcore white supremacists, they practice
well,
bestiality
it
on
there goes a
They
children,
get
danger.
caught all the
rape.
time. They get caught all the time for those
That's
crimes.
the danger of not knowing history and
Yeah,
history being suppressed is Europeans enslaved themselves first. Everything they've done to us, they've done to themselves worse. And I'm not playing a violin for them, but what I am saying is if we would have known that, imagine how far we would have been if our grandparents or the golden generation, if they knew, wait a minute, these people don't, they don't play fair with each other. They enslave children, and if the golden generation knew that, the civil rights movement would have went differently, and we wouldn't have had any goddamn integration. That wouldn't have happened. We would have been like, no, 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 no. You see how things work? We would our the golden generation would have been like, no, 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 no. We just want our own shit. Get away from us. But that's why I'm here. Is to let y'all know what went down. Appreciate it, Mr. AI. We're gonna go to this guy that. Go ahead, bro.
Yeah.
This guy, that guy.
Yes, sir.
Y'all hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
sir. We can hear
Uh,
you.
okay, great. I just wanted to make a couple of points back to the whole what Wani was talking about and with the children. Um, and if I used to be in the army, and I had some friends that deployed to Afghanistan, right? Um, and they have over there, they were talking about, and they actually did a document. You've probably seen little web series or TikToks on it. They have these boys, they call them chai boys, and they would serve tea to the men.
Wow. Yes.
So you know where I'm going with this, and they
Yeah,
were
yeah. One of my homeboys was a Marine, and and the Marines had a real hard time dealing with it because they wanted to
right,
like shoot him up, and the military
right.
wouldn't let them.
Yep. Yeah, so just quick, obviously knows what I'm talking about, but they basically would abuse them. They would use them like, not even, I don't want to say but concubines. I don't even want to say prostitutes because they didn't pay them, but they would basically SA them, and grape them. These young boys, and they were almost like they would kind of dress them like girls too because they would wear like eyeshadow and they'd be kind of I guess dainty is the word, the way they'd walk around and stuff like that. And so, this is stuff that we don't even do this in America, really, but definitely not in FBA society. This is not real, but overseas, they just don't care about their kids. Another thing, too, at my old job, my coworker, he's from Cameroon. And there was a couple of Africans that worked there. And one of the Ethiopians, we were talking about like the same thing, like child abuse and whatnot overseas. And he was telling me, the Cameroonian coworker, he was like, yeah, man, my mom almost because Europeans or Americans, they would go and adopt children. We all know about that whole thing that they do. They go adopt those African children and bring them back. And he was saying that his mom almost gave him up for adoption to a white family, but stopped. She had a change of heart and didn't do it. And I told him, I said, man, I said, you're lucky because had that happened, you wouldn't be where you at right now. I'll just say that, you know. So this is common practice over there. And one thing I got to give the Ethiopians is that they actually stopped that because they had a couple of them that happened, and the kids like created they had did suicide. They had committed suicide because of the abuse that was going on. So one thing I have to get to them is they actually stopped that when with Europeans coming over and adopting them and all that. They don't allow that to go anymore. So I just wanted to say that, and then there was something else that you
Hey,
guys were talking about. What was the last thing that you were talking about before I talked?
oh my goodness, I
Pope
forget.
in it. Pope Nicholas the Fifth.
No, it was after that.
No.
There was
A white
Austin Metcalf. Oh
supremacist?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, Austin Metcalf.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Okay. Uh the dad was you probably said no, the dad had gotten arrested for SA. He has a criminal history of doing that. He sexually assaulted somebody. I forgot what it was, but he got arrested for that. So that was the other thing. There was something else I wanted to mention, but I'll just yield the mic
I'm
right now.
so glad, brother, that you
Mhm.
I'm gonna send you a follow. I'm so glad you brought that up because that's part of one of my, maybe I shouldn't say it in space, but I'm around family, so I'm gonna let y'all know. One thing I'm doing research on for maybe a book I'm gonna write years down the road is genetic uh nature versus nurture argument, genetic links to um psychopaths. And if we keep that in mind, that there's a genetic link. I'm not a geneticist, which makes Wani very valuable in my spaces. Is so I'm trying to learn like a student, learn this stuff. But there are genetic links to insanity and child abuse and sexual abuse. That shit, we know that, y'all know that shit runs in the family. Not in my family. We're not perfect, but we don't have a history of that. But I do hear people in families that say, if family reunion, stay away from him, stay away from Uncle so and so. Well, I'm saying that to say, if you look back at history, history erases the motherfucking mystery. And if you look at where a lot of these Europeans came from, they came from the Georgia Corporation. And the Georgia Corporation, long story short, During the 13 colonies before America was America, blacks and Native Americans, Native blacks, according to Dr. Claude Anderson, rose up and said, "Fuck this shit, let's strike them." We were beating the living shit out of Thomas Jefferson's clan and the Benjamin Franklin. We beat their ass so good that they ran to England and said, "Your Majesty, we need help. The colors are killing us." I'll put a join the snake article in there to show y'all more how it works later on, but long story short, Captain James Oglethorpe of Georgia, the state I'm in right now, Georgia was created as a corporation full of criminals and psychopaths from England to defend whites against us. What am I saying? What I'm saying is a lot of the although we didn't get the worst of it, Australia got the worst. They got the psychopaths. We got the broke debtors and perverts. And we got some murderers too, but there's a link to these white people from the Georgia Corporation and sexual abuse and psychopathy and mismanagement of money. So my argument is down the line they keep having kids. That's in their DNA to do that shit, man. And
I
because
mean,
go ahead, go
let
ahead,
me,
one.
that reminds me of there was a show about crime in Australia, and oh my God. And I looked at a lot of crime stories, and they had some of the worst torture crimes. This man was he's basically stabbing young, and this crime was they were doing this against their own people. So these white men were catching, and it was a club catching young white men. Hey, you want a bride? Okay, cool. And then they would stab them in the back to paralyze them, and then of course do all kinds of sexual things. It was horrific. Horrific. They did everything. They put people in vats of acid. They were going around. I can't even describe it, but it was crime after crime after crime that was extra, extra brutal. And I often wondered, is this, you know, is this their lineage? Are
It
they
is.
out
It is, and I'm
because
not
they're
being.
criminals?
I'm not wanting it is, and I'm not being xenophobic or bigot. I'm telling the truth. That's history. Listen to this. And a geneticist was explaining to me genetics is something I really don't know that much about. I'm learning. It's complicated. Wani, maybe you can help me with that. But and a geneticist was explaining to me that when you can change your DNA. We see that a lot with alcoholism and drug abuse. Like one person, let's say I developed a drug habit and start smoking crack or whatever, and then we start having kids. My kids are going to be genetically predisposed to my like I changed my DNA. And I'm genetically predisposing my children to do that. So, with that being said, guess what? Foundational Black Americans have a genetic predisposal to what? Resistance and strength. That's who we are. um like Wani just said, and I said before her, the Georgia Corporation whites have a genetic predisposition of criminality because Captain James Oglethorpe made a fucking deal, Black Americans, with criminals in England. It was a win-win for them because Her Majesty the Queen did not want criminals in UK. And he said, "Well, Your Majesty, let's get rid of our criminals and make a deal with the criminals that if they protect the whites from the blacks, even though white wasn't a word back then, um, and the Indians, we'll make them citizens." And that's who they are. Guys, let me tell you what prompted that. I'm from Birmingham, and I grew up. My home church is 16th Street Baptist Church. You know, the church where four little girls got blown up. And when I was ushering, I used to usher. I was on the Ursher board, is what they used to say. We would walk up and down them steps to Ursher, and it's Usher in the north, and the back in Alabama it's Ursher. I'm a Ursher, but we would walk up them stairs for.
And my dad's from Tuscaloosa, Alabama, by the way.
Oh yeah,
Well,
yeah. T Town all day. That's my lineage. That's what my mama name is linked to. But anyway, we'll talk about that. Tuscaloosa means black warrior, I think, but which nobody knows about that. The whitest school on the planet is in the Black Warrior town. Go figure. Roll Tide, right? Well, anyway, uh, the genetics that my home church of 16th Street, I would walk up and down them steps where the girls got blown up. Like the like Sunday school is downstairs of the church. everybody knows that because it's a big, used to be a big, it still is a big Sunday school. So he was targeting children when he threw that dynamite through the window. And as a young man, as a child, I couldn't understand it. I was like, why would you, if you hated black people, why didn't you just throw it in the, congregation? Why would you target children? They were intentionally targeted. And later on, I would discover that, oh, Bob Cherry was a member of the goddamn, he's at Georgia Corporation shit. So they have a long lineage of just cutting off heads and hurting children and blowing people up. Delineating is one of the best things we could have ever done because, like our brother Kendrick Lamar put it, they ain't like us. Go ahead, Bass Black. I see based black. I'm
I
assuming
want
it
to say
says base.
something
Go
about
ahead, bro.
slavery. Somebody that um that slavery uh based
You're
like
breaking up.
existed
You breaking
since
up,
long
brother.
time. The concept of slavery, but the concept of cattle slavery relatively that's
Base
more
black. You breaking up. I
nineteenth
can't hear
century.
you.
I want to hear this too.
Yeah, I want to hear. I can't hear you, bro. Can you move somewhere where you got reception?
Yeah. Oh shit, it's bad. Can you hear me now?
I hear you now.
Yeah, you were saying that the chattel slavery was how old?
Relatively like 16th, 15th century.
Okay, so the other kind of slavery, please describe it.
The other kind of slavery was more of, uh, well, it varies. It could be conquest.
No, 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 no. Describe, we're not talking about conquests. Describe what happened to the person who was enslaved.
Well, okay, so they were either conquered by another group of people, um, say during war, and forced into forced slavery for basically the rest of their lives or a certain amount of
Mm-hmm.
time.
Mm-hmm. And
Um,
that's different how?
well, the concept of cattle slavery is
That's
more
different how?
it was more ingrained in racial ideology, which
Okay, so hold on. Just because they were doing it and didn't care what race they were does not mean it wasn't chattel slavery.
Facts.
It's the same thing. In fact, getting buried because the owner died, these things are extremely brutal and do not make me feel that there's some difference in the way Africans were treating anybody around them versus the way that Europeans treated us. I want to see something fundamentally different. Because we could even say, oh, well, they married them. That's not getting married. That's raping somebody and forcing them to be your wife. That's like the Ottoman Empire. But white men were down here
yeah, well,
marrying black women.
the concept of rape.
White men were down here marrying black women in Louisiana and having full blown families with them without being married. So please tell me how what Africans were doing is different than chattel slavery.
Shout out Thomas Jefferson.
Well,
Really?
like I was saying, like these things, like you're looking at it in a lens of
That
modernization,
sounds
modern.
like white speak. I don't do that. I asked you a direct question. How is what Africans were doing to other Africans different than what the European did with us? How is it not chattel if they're being sold, cannot leave ever, and are being married off and having anything done to their person? Tell me how it's different.
It's different because it was justified through racial science that had developed
That
around.
It's not
so no,
science.
no, no.
Yeah, it's not science.
That's not even true because you guys are justifying it through, yeah, I said you guys are justifying it through ethnic bigotry. What's the difference? This is another tribe. This is an ethnic bigotry versus racism. What's the difference? You're still dead. You're still enslaved. Explain. How is it not chattel slavery?
I guess it's the same, but like the
It's
concept
the
behind it.
same. No concept, my ass. It's the same. Point blank.
This that damn Pan-African argument that's bullshit. Of the Africans didn't treat their slaves as bad as the white man did.
Oh no, I never said
They
that.
certainly did.
That would be
They
very untrue. In
both of
fact,
them are, you know what, when I was a teenager, I said this is what formed in my mind. I said they couldn't have treated slaves too bad because they needed them to work. So how could they treat them badly? Aren't they as valuable as a horse? I didn't understand things very well, did I? These are evil people. They don't care if they kill their property. Okay? They don't care about that. Plus, they got us for super cheap, so it wasn't a big deal. Plus, they had insurance on lost property, so it wasn't a big deal. So, yeah, they could string you up and then get the insurance and all of that. So, they could be brutal based on the fact that Africans sold 40 human beings for a jug of something. Can you imagine that? And then the European came over here and was selling people for between $300 and $1,200. Okay, that's a lot of money that
Yep.
was made, and they got these things for nothing, for some broken up mirrors and umbrella, just raggedy things that they could find in their attic. That's a hell of a lot of money. And yes, because of that, that was another factor in why we were treated like nothing. We weren't valuable like a stallion on a farm. We didn't have that kind of value. And that's why, like I said before that, I said, how could they have treated us so bad? Didn't we have value? No, we did not, based on the African doing what it did.
Well, to kind of debunk what the dude talking about, in the jumbo trying to put a lot of evidence to show how brutal Africans were. And I'm not defending Europeans, don't hear me wrong, but that shit about Africans having different slavery practices that were kinder is debunked like a motherfucker. All you got to do is look at the picture of the house, the little huts I have. They're called the Royal Palaces of Abomey. And that Royal Palace of fucking Abomey is in West Africa, right outside Nigeria, or is it Nigeria? I don't know how the fuck you say that place, but
They say Nigeria. Why? I
Nigeria,
don't know.
Nigeria,
Nigeria.
Nigeria. Well, anyway, yeah. Anyway, they would take those slaves that the gentleman is arguing were treated better and different, and fucking kill them by the hordes, de-blood them, soak, dump their blood in a fucking bucket, and they use their blood to paint the building. That building was so much blood was used to paint that goddamn building that in 2025 it's rusted all over it. Why? Because blood contains iron, and just imagine how much blood did they have to use hundreds of years ago for there to be fucking rust stains all over the goddamn building. They soaked that goddamn building in blood. And I'm not defending filthy ass European slavery. I'm not doing that. But I'm saying it's one thing. Well, no, it's equally disgusting, but it's a whole step in a whole nother direction to view human beings as fucking paint. Oh yeah, give me him because I'm gonna use him to paint the wall. I'm gonna paint the bathroom with her. I mean, that's bullshit. That's some Pan African shit to make us think that we all brothers, which we ain't.
I will say when I compare European slavery to African slavery, it's pretty much equal. The only difference, they're both brutal, ignorant, violent, and insane. And you can't reason with them. But the only difference is that the African is why this was able to happen. They could have said, no, we're not doing that. And then the European wouldn't have those people. So they're more guilty
Right.
because they made it happen. They were known for selling human beings, and that's why they made a beeline over there. Not only were they known for doing this with Arabs, they were just known for doing it. They were also um, the missionaries decided, hey, we can't use these natives, so we need someone else. And so everything lined up against them, against us, you know, It just lined up against our lineage.
What support what Wani Spots just said, according to Claude Anderson in Black Labor White Wealth, page 113, he says, true or not, quote, white traders took advantage of the tribal chiefs' generosity. Stop right there. Now, the generosity that the African tribal chiefs was doing to a European, and y'all help me to understand this. I'm not the smartest guy on the planet. Y'all know the Europeans had nothing to offer. What was it? Broken mirrors, Wani, umbrellas. They didn't have nothing to
Umbrellas, jugs
offer.
of wine, maybe they might get a gun here and there. Different little random things.
Stuff the African tribal chiefs didn't need. When I was in the jungles of Togo, they had rice wine, and that's all the wine you need. That shit's stronger than a motherfucker. Everybody was wasted off a couple cups of that shit. So the African tribal chiefs were being generous by giving. They view that as generosity. I'm going to give you a couple little girls and a little boy and a pregnant woman or two. Here you go, you can have this. Oh, European, why would they give that away? I don't understand it. Dr. Claude Anderson says this self-destructive tribalism, self-enslavement, and lack of concern with wealth was interpreted. We said were interpreted by Europeans as a sign of inferiority. The Europeans, they, quote, believed that the uncivilized, childlike heathens neither appreciated nor deserved their God given wealth. Consequently, whites rationalized that it was their moral duty to take and utilize Africa's wealth and put the blacks back to productive works as slaves. What did Dr. Claude Anderson say? Let me break it down. He said that like Wani was implying earlier, these tribal African chiefs opened the door to our oppression. If they had a stood on 10, even if they would have said, you know what, I'm gonna have slaves, I'm gonna do what I want. I'm gonna paint a whole goddamn building in blood, which is disgusting. But European, you ain't me, you ain't gonna have it. Or European, I don't fucking know you. You can't have this shit. This is mine. If they would have acted differently, Africa would have been in a better position and Europe would have fucking failed. Africans are responsible for the system of white supremacy because they opened the goddamn door with generosity, whatever the fuck that means.
Yep, they created white supremacy, and European was allowed to get control of the Western Hemisphere, making him a white supremacist with power and money. And Europe was able to be built up. That's why when you go to Europe, all the buildings are beautiful. Everything is reeking with wealth
Let,
from years and years of the Greco-Roman Empire layered with all that money from slavery. Yeah, they got it going on. And they're not even doing well collectively, but you can see it in that architecture. We don't have good architecture like that. Don't know why, but we just don't have that same level of architecture. But you can see the wealth. You can see it.
yeah, and I'm gonna argue that they're still doing it. How? We live in the age of technology. We're in the age of Aquarius, ladies and gentlemen, and there's a material in cell phones and in computers that is absolutely required for me to be on this iPhone right now. Guess where it's found? In Congo, in Africa. And if Africans rally up and say, you know what? I am responsible for this technology age, and you're not coming here and taking any more of that material. They got, man, they got negotiation. They got chips to bargain with. Why aren't they bargaining? Why are they
You
letting
know
people?
what they do?
What?
They're asked to give up this, what is it, cobalt? I forget what it is. Don't
I'm
care.
looking it up now.
But instead of saying yes, and it takes this many men to mine it, and they need to be paid proper wages, they need to have safety precautions, they don't do that. They just go, oh, you want some stuff? Let me go grab some little round-headed African boys from the village, the same little round-headed African boys that I see on a ship manned by Moors headed for some place to enslave them. The same little round headed boys. They keep producing generations of people that they abuse.
Yeah, they're still abusing little boys, which goes back to our thesis. Are Africans speaking out against FBA children? Do Africans care about children? Apparently not. Because, like Wani said, they're still exploiting little children. Baby boys over there. And guess what, ladies and gentlemen? It wasn't just one thing they need for these cell phones. Um, According to Chat GPT, you need tantalum. Um, what is
But palladium, I think palladium, right?
It says tantalum. It's found in the coltan and blah blah blah. Tantalum is used in the capacitors to regulate voltage and improve audio quality. And they need tin and tungsten. These are also crucial for various components in electronic devices. Gold, we all know about that. It's done in used in circuitry. And cobalt. Cobalt is a key, like Wani said, a key ingredient in lithium ion batteries, which smartphones and other devices are heavily mined in the Democratic.
Elon Musk.
Yeah, Africa got these motherfuckers got what do you call it? They got leverage. Why don't they stand on? I wish FBAs would be standing on some
They're
cobalt.
not smart. They are perpetually dumb.
Something's
They
going
don't
on.
do that. They don't just say, hey, yeah, we have the goods and it costs this much. They just start stealing people's children and making up oh, they tricked us into selling our children. No, they didn't. You just saw dollar signs and you went back to the number one thing you do, steal humans and put them in bondage. That's all they do. They don't know
Wow, the
anything
number
else.
one thing they do. Wow.
That's all they know. That's the answer to everything. Go steal some little boy and throw him up in a mine or on a plant. They still have kids on plantations right now. And if you say something, oh no, they're being paid. No, they're not. Oh, their parents owe money. I don't care. They have all kinds of excuses to do slavery.
Wildness. We're gonna go to Queen Kush. Oh, hold on. Let's see if Base Black got some a rebuttal to that, and then Queen Kush. What's on your mind, Base Black? I can't hear you. Is it my phone? Can y'all hear me talking?
Yes.
Base Black must be in West Africa somewhere. I can't hear him. Base Black, can you hear me? Base Black, find some reception, then raise your hand.
Scott, now he needs to get up higher on the zebra because it I can't hear anything. Twist the zebra's ear to the left
Base Black,
and then
Base Black, go find a giraffe and climb his or her neck.
You guys, you going about it all wrong. Base Black, use your Chinese neighbor's phone.
Base Black, go find Huawei. Get a Huawei phone because they have better reception.
Not Huawei.
what the hell?
And they're going to surveil his ass.
Base Black, you know that grocery store that you're not allowed to go in that's ran by Tsinghua? Go there. I heard they have good cell phone reception there, like close.
Y'all stupid. Go ahead, Queen Kush.
Oh my God, y'all got me over here dying. So hey, good afternoon, good night, good evening, everybody, wherever you are in the world, including he fell off. Oh dang. Um, man. Well, anyway,
Say
family,
ni
peace.
hao. You have to say ni hao to Base Black. That's how you. That's how he says hello. Ni hao. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, ni hao. I'm actually working. I'm trying to learn a little bit of Chinese and a little bit of Russian, so I can move in between conversations. But anyway, I digress. Getting to the topic, or just what I came in on. So I've been wanting to ask this about one or two spaces ago. Have any of y'all heard of he's one of my favorites, Dr. William Mackey. Dr. William Mackey used to, I would listen to him along with Dr. John Henry Clark, Dr. Ivan Van Sertima, all of them. Have y'all ever heard of Dr. William Mackey?
I don't think so.
Okay. Dr.
I
William
heard of him
Mackey.
before. Yeah, I heard of him.
Okay, Dr. William Mackey was the person who kind of put me on to the geopolitical reasons for why the Bible was manipulated, why they had the Nicene Conference, the Council of Nicaea, sorry, the Council of Nicaea, and all of that, and the geopolitical reasons for the reshaping of the Bible, and why you see a mix of, like, see my air quotes, pagan holidays mixed with Christian holidays and stuff like that. So I say all of that because one thing about Dr. William Mackey, he always used to come to his sessions with a gang of books. He always had books with him. And there was one book that he talked about titled Dirt. He just said the book was titled
It's
Dirt.
wonderful.
And okay, I would love to get my hands on that book, Dirt. But when he talked about dirt, he was saying the very things that y'all were saying. A lot of what the Europeans did, or the pale faced Europeans did to dark skinned people, they were already doing to them. So I mean, grotesque. Like they would being graphic so people can understand how sick these people are. They would take like the horn of an animal, shove it up the rectum of a person, and then take a hot poker to burn the person from the inside. But to have the horn so that it could shield the person's rectum, so they could burn the person but not burn the rectum. Like that's the type of sick shit they would do. And another thing that I thought was interesting, when we think about like kids stories, like I'm sitting here watching TV now, or just scrolling through TV, and I see the Hansel and Gretel story. These people tell stories about cannibalism of children. Like these were the bedtime, you telling children bedtime stories about Hansel and Gretel. And we never think about the fact that that's actually a story about cannibalism of children. These people were too poor. And so they were like, yeah, we'll just eat the kids.
And
And
Little Red Riding Hood too.
with the wolf, yes, all of these stories about cannibalism that we just kind of think nothing of. But as you get older, it's just like, oh, okay, these people have always been into like this type of sick type of culture, which goes to what Professor was saying about, is this something that is genetically passed down? In addition to genetically, when you're baking this in to your kid time stories and you're baking this into your nursery rhymes, it's not just genetics. You're literally baking this into your culture and making it something you've now made it something palatable, if you will. Like I said, a nursery rhyme. Nobody's thinking anything harmful of a nursery rhyme until you actually sit and dissect it. But the other thing we were talking about with the Africans and how cruel and how sick they were, I agree. This whole thing where they try to say that they were forced, that they had no choice. Like this is the new Pan-African conversation, because they're now trying to see if they can find their own way to a reparations claim or whatever. And so now they're trying to say, well, we were harmed because the Europeans came in and the Europeans did that. No, they didn't. They didn't. I just can't. For lack of a better, I can't with the lies that they're constantly telling, and they're trying to reshape history. And my last point, when we're talking about current modern day, the resources they have under the continent. I just had a conversation with a coworker of mine about the resources that the Africans have under the continent. And I said, the Africans don't control the resources. I said, but we have to keep in mind that the Africans, since the Belgian conference, have been centuries behind industrial revolutions. So we're now moving towards AI and things like that. The Chinese are now teaching their children in elementary school and things about how to do AI. The Africans are currently dealing with modern day slavery off of the continent. They're too far behind any of our industrial revolutions for them to be caught up. So even if, let's hypothetically say, they control the cobalt in Sudan, I mean, not in Sudan, sorry, in Congo. Let's hypothetically say they did control it. They would not know how to negotiate, not only just making sure that people had fair wages, but making sure that there were jobs and ways to teach their people not only what to do with the cobalt, how to put it into a cell phone. They don't even negotiate to bring the industrial age. You're not even building up Congo to make it so that people would come there and want to work in the technology field, not just in the mines. Everybody don't want to mine cobalt. They don't have it. That's how far behind they are. So for me, I don't think the Africans will ever get up to excuse me, I don't think they'll ever get up to speed at this point. They're that far behind. If we think about the Belgian conference and how long ago that was to today, I don't think they'll ever get caught up. And that's their own fault. And I yield the mic.
I think one of the problems with West Africa is it never was properly organized. It's not as strong as East Africa. Well, I'm focusing on Ethiopia. Ethiopia is fairly strong in terms of having some sort of roots, like an educational system. There's a huge difference. So, what it looks like is that Africans are just flitting around, and people come through and say, hey, you should be Catholic, you should be Christian, you should be Muslim. And then they rally around that. They think that's more impressive than their indigenous religions. And they look at those people like, well, look how good they're doing. So that justifies them changing religions. And then they make Timbuktu, but it's still not them. It's still an Arab overlay over what they should have already developed. But they didn't do that. They didn't develop these things because, like yesterday, we were discussing how young these tribes are, and they were fighting each other. So when did they have a chance to do what the Chinese did, like have a whole civilization, have writing systems, ways of thinking, um, governance principles? And yes, Chinese people didn't have it smooth. They were taken over by the Mongols, but the Mongols still did things the Chinese way. They were taken over by the Manchurians, but they still didn't lose their basic culture. Africans simply never formed a decent, cohesive culture, so other people could easily come in and sway them. And they're like I said, they see shiny things before their eyes, and they're willing to just throw it all away. Somebody said we need some cobalt, so they just started stealing little boys. I saw them with my own eyes and throwing them in a mine. They didn't negotiate. They didn't do anything. Their go-to thing is to steal labor. So, yeah, that's why the European came over there, to get stolen labor.
Yeah, and to support what Wani just said, with your own eyes, those of you who are visual learners like myself, look in the jumbotron and argue with those pictures. I'm ready to hear the argument. Base Black, what do you think about this? Base Black, do you have reception yet? Base Black, have you found a zebra?
He won't.
Hello?
Hello, you found a giraffe?
He's on a
Yeah,
giraffe now.
sure. Sure, yeah, I found the giraffe.
Good.
Okay, cool.
Um, yeah, I don't know. My internet's been kind of wonky. It went out.
Internet. Wink, wink, nod, nod. Internet. Sure, you've got internet.
But I was gonna say, a lot of it is just they're incompetent people in general and easily conquered. Um, but my thing is also we have to focus also on the the Islamic uh, involvement in slavery as well, and barbarism that came from the Islamic world towards black people
But
and slavery in general.
hold on. Who was selling these terrible Arabs human beings? You're mentioning terrible people. We know that the Arabs are terrible. We know the Europeans are terrible, but that doesn't mean anything. There's lots of terrible people on the planet. But if someone comes in knocking on my door and they say, do you have any babies I can borrow? No. And I'm calling the police. Do you have any little children I can put? No, I don't. Any women I can put on the corner? No, I don't have any women you can put on the corner. Thank you. Goodbye. You see the difference? You guys say, yeah, I got women, I got baby. You want to eat one of the babies? You can do. I'll fire roast a baby for you. You guys do anything over there.
I'm talking to a mute. I don't think that well, what I think is irrelevant. What the gentleman just said was so disingenuous. Hopefully he just doesn't know what he's talking about. But if you look in the Jumbotron, I put a graph from Dr. Claude Anderson or in the chat. They're trying to mess with my chat again. There it is. Um, if you look at it, it clearly debunks it all, and it fits so perfectly in our conversation because, ladies and gentlemen, look at the quietly look at the graph in the jumbotron as I read aloud. 1400. Bam. What does that say? In 1400, displacement of Africa's natural and human wealth began. Go back to the beginning of our conversation. What did we learn about 1400? What did I tell you? I told you a damn fool tribal African pretending to be a king who he wasn't. Wani, y'all just had an epiphany. The same shit is going on that went on in 1384. We got Africans coming over here talking about I am a king. I'm royalty. That shit is what got us in trouble. African pretending to be Prester John gave some of his enslaved personal stock to show off to a nasty European person who he didn't know or understand, probably for free, maybe for a weapon. We'll never know. And in 1400, who received it? Pope Innocent II. And it says the displacement began. Why? Because Pope Innocent II and the Catholic Church said, damn, that's a good idea. Let's just use them as slaves. So back to what that gentleman just said about the Arabs. Look at 1500. What's the first word in Dr. Claude Anderson's graph? Tribal chiefs. So the tribal chiefs, the African tribal chiefs were the first. They were the first to be giving away people and children and their family members and shit. And the Arabs said, damn, that's a good idea. And the Moors probably said, well, you know what? I'm going to make money off this too. And modern slavery began. It all goes back to Africa.
Yep. No matter what kind of African it is, East or West, they love throwing people in slavery.
Mm-mm. We're going to go to Housing and then the Tether Whisperer. What's up, Housing?
Shout out to everybody, Wani, Nikki the God,
Hey.
Professor. Uh, this is my take. You know, Africans speaking out against FBA all day long. Did England clearly define? You lost me on this one,
What a woman
Professor.
is. England, the
Okay,
UK said that women are women and they don't have, eggplants under their dresses.
all right, I got you. I'm gonna pass that one out. But Professor and Wani in the room, my take on Africa and how they come this far. A lot of the leaders are too busy running around in Europe spending people's money and messing with a bunch of white girls, having ghetto sex while they people are starving. And the lower ones are able to come over here and come among our groups, penetrate our groups, and undermine us. The ones that's in politics right now, like the guy was saying, the one at the McCarthy's rally. You had one black guy sitting on a bus like a soldier, and he's not American. He openly went against FBA and got up there and got with a bunch of white supremacy. At the end of the day, they treat him like crap. Then you got the females, they come here, they just talk dirty uh, towards us for no reason. And we the only one that really have their backs. But no more, like Wani said, we're gonna just
Had, past tense.
yes, past tense had. But these African leaders, and it's so horrible how y'all was giving description about how they treat the kids in Africa. It's crazy. But then let's move on to the white supremacy. Let's move on to these crazy white people in America. The major news keep it quiet, but only thing you hearing is about the teachers is having sex with little boys. They raping little kids, 3 and 4 years old, even babies. Like they literally you know, That wickedness from their ancestors is coming out full blown right now. It's just coming right out. They just like, but the news keep it real quiet, Professor Juan. They keep it real quiet. It's like a one and done. Nothing's here.
But that's why we're
It's
here. We're Black
absolutely.
Americans.
You know,
We're serving an important role right now. We're standing for justice.
exposing them. And I'm gonna land my plane with this. Black Americans, and I repeat, Black Americans is the most moral people on this planet. Land my plane. The most moral. We don't get down like that. Yeah, I'ma always say that. We got a Ray Ray and Pookie in the area, and we got little Shakia acting up, cutting up. But at the end of the day, that's just a small, small, small portion. Well, what Tyree call it, the underbelly of America, of Black America. They don't never talk about how other Americans, Black Americans, is prospering, how they doing so well. And I land my plane. Thank you.
No, you're right. We do have that small underbelly, but there's no group on earth that doesn't have that. I mean, these people are literally on mattresses in Queens, New York, on the sidewalk. They have brothels everywhere. They call them massage parlors. Nobody wants to talk about that. Like, if we did that, it would be like, these people are trash. And yet, when they get a mug shot, they get a Costco version mug shot. It's like 30 women on one mug shot. They
And
drag
Ronnie, they
30
all look
broads out.
alike.
I
They
know.
all
So
they
they,
all look alike. You can't
they
tell
can,
one from the other.
right. Their mug shots are not good because when they get a mug shot, no one remembers, they don't remember what they look like. They all look alike. They generally look alike.
And you notice how small the mug shot is when they do take it and show it?
It
You
doesn't
can't
even embarrass them. Are you going to
yes.
remember which one of them was on the mugshot? Nope.
But
They're
they make
anonymous.
sure
They're
but they
anonymous.
but they make sure they show Ray Ray and Pookie full blown, hair all wild and everything. And they
Yep.
repeat the story on what Ray Ray and Pookie did repeatedly, repeatedly, repeatedly.
Now the immigrants are getting a gift, and the gift is that stories about them, because the globalists want them to be able to invade everyone's countries. When they commit crimes, the crimes are undercharged, not charged at all, smothered, buried under. So this is why they're allowed to do this. They're on another. It's a tiered justice system, and um, they're not getting the full weight of the law. So they can come over here, get mad at their daughter. This actually happens regularly. They'll get mad at their little Arab daughter because she wants to be Americanized. She's going to school. She doesn't want to wear a burqa. She wears a little tight t shirt like her friends, nothing out of the ordinary. And the father will put a couple of bullets in her forehead, and the sister has to sit there and cover it up, or else she's going to get it too. It's an honor killing. The
Well,
Congress has had to address honor killings here in this country because of that behavior, and the parents just sit there looking like we did our duty. She defamed the family, so she had to die. The police don't pursue that because they know what's going on. They don't pursue it
Wanda,
because
they're
it's
trying to have, not to
cultural.
cut you off, Wanda, they're trying to have that Muslim, that Arab law right there in Detroit. What is called,
Sharia
Professor?
law, Sharia
Sharia,
law.
right?
Yeah, yes. They
Well,
trying to pass
let
that
them have.
right now.
Uh,
Well, see, the problem is they may pass it, but then okay, you have to go back in history and see how Muslims work. They push that by the sword, or they'll be trading in your area. Next thing you know, the whole damn area is Islamic. So they're very menacing. They can have a little area of Sharia law where they throw stones at their women's heads, but the next thing you know, they'll be throwing stones at your women's heads.
yeah,
Will it allow that?
that's the
Will that be allowed to get a Arab female get stoned in America? Will that be
Well,
allowed?
Yes, it will.
No, I don't think if that happens, especially if it happens to a white woman, that's not gonna fly.
No, we said Arab.
Oh yeah. Well,
yeah,
Yeah.
Wani, that's happening right now, isn't it? What do you call doggone, what do you call it? It's the how the law in America looks at cultural practices and ignores
Mhm.
shit that what's that called again?
I forget. Not a two-tier justice system.
No, no, no. We were talking about how it's almost like diplomatic immunity, certain practices that
Yes,
go
it is.
along.
So that when this guy, that guy was talking about the chai boys. Well, I call them bachabazi boys. It's the same thing. Boy dancers. This is an old, old practice. Even it's the same thing they had in the Aztec Empire. They had the same thing in the Greco-Roman Empire where they tuck the women away. The women aren't allowed to go outside. So the only people outside are children and trashy women. Well, some of the places they don't even have trashy women. So the only people around are children. And they kill all those in Afghanistan. They kill all the trashy women. So I know they don't have they don't even have regular women. They don't have trashy women. Trust me. They don't. You can't be trashy there.
Yeah, that they've got
So
some
Y'all must be
issues.
goats.
they really do.
Yeah,
you know, oh,
yeah, I was just gonna say that under Sharia law, I'm wondering certain things are allowed. The Constitution is strange. We have First Amendment. I'm paraphrasing the First Amendment. Basically, the First Amendment says it just grants freedom of religion, freedom of expression, freedom of the press. All three of those are weaponized against Black Americans because certain groups. Let's take for instance the Native Americans. In some Native American practices, they're allowed to smoke hallucinogenic peyote and schedule what is it, Schedule 2 narcotics. I think Schedule 2. Somebody fact check me on that, but they're allowed to do it because it's part of their cultural practice. So, we're freedom of the press. We're allowed to have freedom of press. So, what does that do? That weaponizes the press against foundational Black Americans. But what I'm trying to say to answer the gentleman's question is, it's my concern that the way certain cultures are taking over America, I'm afraid that we're going to start seeing some of those Sharia law practices become kind of normalized under the First Amendment. That's one of my fears. Ladies and gentlemen, if you look back to the 60s, I think, in Iran, I'm gonna find a picture and put it up. In the Islamic world, this ideology of extreme Sharia law is fucking new. It's new some of these countries. You can find pictures in Iran in the 60s of women walking around with looking sexy and shit
Mini
without.
skirts. Mini
Yeah,
skirts.
yeah, they cracked down around in the 50s and 60s, and this whole thing about wearing a burqa is kind of new. We don't know that. So my argument is it's possible that it could come over here and be normalized. Guys, when I was in teaching in Memphis the year before last, this we saw this happen. The First Amendment. Check this out. Y'all can fact check this. um it was an elementary school in Memphis that had a Christian group, like a prayer group. We had them in Alabama. I also remember one in high school called First Priority, where we would pray before for lunch and stuff. We would gather, and it's allowed under the First Amendment. So in Memphis, a Muslim group said, you know what, the Christians are at an elementary school. The Christians are allowed to pray before lunch and get in their own little group, so we're going to do it. So the board had to authorize them to bring prayer rugs in, get dismissed to wherever they want to go, and face the sun, etc., etc. So, do y'all not know a Luciferian group, a satanic church? A teacher, ladies and gentlemen, said, you know what, I'm a Luciferian. I need to be able to worship the devil. And she had a satanic group with kindergartners. Can y'all imagine that? And of course they shut it down and was like, nope, you can't do that here. And she won in court. So now in Memphis they have a
Yep.
satanic group worshiping Satan in the lunchroom while people are worshiping Jesus and Muhammad. So y'all know the practices that go along with Satanism. I mean, I think they drink blood, don't they?
Remember, Sharia,
Most Satanists are atheists just being
we're
contemptuous.
going to have a room about atheists so I can get on your nerves and give you questions. You're
So we're
not
gonna
an
go in on that,
you're
huh,
not an
Ronnie?
atheist. I'm not going to allow it. I'm going to make you
But
believe.
but but Professor,
Yes, sir.
you Americans can't go to no other country and do what they do and do what they do here. This is why it shouldn't be allowed. If it is, it should be limited.
That's almost common sense, bro. But y'all seen that FBA sister? She was kind of she was a truck driver. She was sexy. She went to it was a period of time where black people were going to Dubai. I never understood that, but everybody was trying to go to Dubai. But this sister went to y'all remember that she went to Dubai and she posted a couple pictures like showing off her boobies.
And they arrested her.
Yeah, they sent her ass to jail. So that's
Yeah.
For
that's just
having breasts?
she wasn't naked. She just like she was in a like a
Well,
little
yeah, you can't do that.
Yeah,
It's
you can't do that
so
there. I thought, right?
it's
You got to be covered. You
no,
can't.
no, 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 no. Yeah.
But they also have American girls go over there to Dubai.
Turning
Oh yeah.
tricks.
Mm,
Listen,
you get
and
face.
the rich guys eat chocolate and they practice. I mean, they bet who could defecate on them more than the other,
jeez.
and they get
Yeah.
up to $50,000 to $100,000 for it.
That's nasty.
That's true. I
But
interviewed a
listen,
girl that did
but
that.
listen again. Black Americans is the most moral people in the world.
Facts.
Because when we hear stuff like that, we cringe. Like when you mentioned back in the days when they said when the slave owner died, they buried the slave with him alive. That is so, oh my God.
That's outrageous. Like, why would you want to do that?
Oh,
I wouldn't want to do that to a dog, you know?
no.
Yeah.
But we the only ones that has that feeling of like we we just feel more than any other group when it comes to that. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. Spiritual connection. We know what's right and what's
Yes,
wrong. Uh,
Black Americans. What Tyree calls the Majaro spirit.
Yeah.
Yeah, we the only ones that possess that.
Well, the Egyptians buried their slaves alive with them
Wow.
or killed them.
Wow, is
Yeah.
that true, Wani?
Yeah. Google it.
I've heard that before.
They were really serious about taking everything with them that they would need. So they viewed those people as something they would need, or they just they were killed to be with the pharaoh so that they could accompany him with into death. So
Is this voluntarily?
uh well yeah, I'm gonna say no because I saw some of the expressions on their faces when they were unburied and it was not fun. So I don't know why they didn't just kill them and bury them. I don't know why they needed to bury them alive. That's one of the most horrible ways to die, and I don't know why they Africans enjoy burying people alive. I don't understand it. It's a common practice
Wow.
So, so Wani, Professor, why are we the most moral people on the planet?
because we've endured a lot of horrible, inhumane behavior, and we're very sensitive to that.
We,
And
we,
it's in our DNA.
we know what it feels like and we don't want but Dr. Welton says something else about that. I don't want to derail the space. Matter of fact, share out the space, ladies and gentlemen. Share it out. We're getting deep today. Dr. Welsing said that we contain a different structure of melanin with our melanocytes, like we absorb and I'll find the quote when the next speaker talks, but she said we're able to absorb. Oh, I'm about to get real deep, and let me be careful because I don't want to disappear. But
No, talk about it, Professor. Talk about it.
Dr. Weldon said we're able to absorb a level of energy, an energy field that other groups, particularly people that don't have that are melanin deficient. Melanin runs all through our uh, nervous system, like it's different. And guys, your skin cell is the second smartest cell in your body behind your brain. Like that's a fact. And if you look at them, you compare them, they look alike. They have a whole. They're very sophisticated. Long story short, Dr. Welsing said that our nervous system structure and melanin allows us to interpret a higher level of energy that other groups can't interpret. And she used that in her article. What was it called, Nikki? That got her fired from Howard. It wasn't the ISIS papers. It was a scholar article.
Yeah, I forgot the name of it, but it's on my
The,
profile.
the was
Yeah.
it the crest theory?
Yeah, the color of something. The color confrontation.
Yeah, color confrontation.
Color confrontation.
Dr. Welsing said when we get in tune with the universe, we can interpret from basically we can, like Tariq said, we can talk to Majara. And evidence of that shit is our brother what was his name? Not Booker T. Booker T. Washington hired him. George Washington Carver. George Washington Carver would go out in the early morning sunlight, which the Egyptians called Kepara. Last night, those of you on the space, I told you that I had a very interesting experience where I was observing Kepra early morning sunlight, which Dr. Jack Cruz says you're supposed to, human beings are supposed to wake up as the sunrise and we're supposed to experience it. That's science. Well, Dr. Welsing said that when Dr. George Washington Carver was walking around in Kepra in the early morning sun, he would get downloads and he was able to communicate with plants. Like no shit, Dr. George Washington Carver said that plants would talk to him and tell him things, which is where he got the information to create mass production. Think of what Henry Ford and the car company start calling factories. They call them what? Plants. Because plants told George Washington Carver, like a human being talking to another human being, this is how you mass produce. So we have that ability. Now, the deep part, housing, is certain powerful people are putting billions of dollars into blocking out the sun. Now, this sounds kooky, but I can prove
No,
it.
I'm well aware of it. What's the name? Bill
I
Gates.
wasn't trying to say his
Yeah, they
name.
are trying to block out the sun. They,
No, Bill Gates just want to put chemicals. That's
yeah,
well known, Professor. That's
after
not
they
new.
messed up the ozone and messed up the
Yes,
sun's interaction with the earth in the first place.
So I,
this guy,
so I,
this guy talking about. Listen, he talking about he want to vaccinate all the plants in the world. Like, what is wrong with him?
I had an experience a couple years ago, about 3 years ago, where I was observing Kepra early morning sun, and the sun was twinkling weird, and I was like, "What the heck?" I was looking, it was like twinkling weird, and everything went white. I got blinded, and I looked away, and for about 15 minutes, it was like the Matrix. I saw a line of code, and everything I looked at, I could see. It's the hardest shit to explain ever, but I could see everything equal the number nine. Like for instance, I was driving down Winchester in Memphis, and I would just saw nines everywhere. Like it was 45 miles an hour to give you an idea, and the speed sign said 45 miles an hour, and I was like, ooh, 4 and 5, that's a nine. I'd look at a restaurant name or something, it'd be like 9 9 9 9. Like those are nine letters. I saw nines everywhere. I later found out that nine is the number of God. So when I found out that the person you mentioned is actively blocking out the sun, somebody in the Air Force brought that to my attention. He was like, "Man, you see those planes? Like planes flying? They were crisscrossing the sun, spraying something that looked like it was blocking the sun out." And I wonder, are they trying to block the sun to keep us from receiving information that we're supposed to receive from the sun? It's just something to think
Professor,
about.
Professor, we know that black people are that's you know. I'm gonna use Superman as an example. You know when Superman get beat up and what he does, he flies up to the out of there and he links up to the sun, and the
Wow.
sun gives him energy.
Dang,
That's
I didn't know
black
that.
people. Yeah, that's black people right there. When black people go out in the sun, we just be rejuvenated. This is why when you go get a physical in the wintertime, doctor tell you, hey, you lacking DNA, you lacking vitamin D. So they want to give you vitamin D. But in the summertime, no. That's where we get our vitamin D from the sun.
Yeah, and our brother Tariq has brought up that they call it, what they call it, turn up August. August has a history of a good history with foundational Black Americans with respect to resistance. August is like, full sunlight. So it's something to think about. It sounds kooky and woo woo, but the question then becomes, why are you trying to block out the sun? What?
It's not kooky or woo woo. They did things to the ozone, and they have to do things to go against that. I just wanted to say, when you experience insane levels of distress, which we did, we lived in fear states on those plantations, off of the plantations, fear of being captured and put back into slavery. When you live under that level of fear that you might die, fear that somebody on the plantation might do something, and then if you don't tell or if you are perceived as doing it, you could be just lynched out of the blue. Not knowing if you're going to live to the next day, not knowing what's going to happen with you, having no control over your life, having your children sold, having all of these things happen to you, being raped. When you live like that, you develop a way to shift into other states, other mental states. And I think in those mental states that we've developed, people are able to accomplish a lot of things that are really, you can't even understand how people are doing this. Creating and inventing things in slavery, winning sports. Sports is mostly mental. You can find somebody with an athletic body, but it's about your mental state, getting over those, you know, like
Obstacle.
mental obstacles, like you're going against a team that's won 10 times in a row, and you just showed up. That's an obstacle, and you have to shift into something in order to get past that feeling that you're not going to get over that. So we have done that in everything that we've done. We've shifted into those states. That's something that we're able to do.
Hey, Wani, Professor, you remember when you said, I think a couple of spaces ago, your hair on your back turned up when somebody said something?
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
All right, when you out in the street and everything, I give you an example. You know the movies. You know the Spider Man
yeah.
when he says, my spider senses are going up. There's danger around.
Yep.
Black people, we have that ability. We know what's going on. We could go into an area and our spider senses just goes to 0 to 60 with no problem. Am I lying?
No, that's
That's
go ahead, one.
I was just going to say that's because we've had to develop extra senses because of the pressure we've
Yes.
been under. We have to read people that are our enemy. We
We
have to
have that
do that.
ability.
Yeah, and what both you and Wani are saying are true. Me and my lady had a long talk the other night. We were talking about this, and she brought up she had an experience in Brooklyn where she went out with her girlfriends to just the club of the decade, and I mean the party at the club. It was like a big deal, like a celebrity party or some shit. And all of a sudden, wearing her best clothes and shit, and just all of a sudden, some said leave, and she started, she lost friends because she was like, I gotta go, take me home, I gotta go. And certain people like, you weird, I'm not fucking with you no more. But when she left, she went home, and she found out the next day that somebody drove up a couple minutes after she left and shot the fucking club up, killing all kinds of people. Well, that happened to me, ladies and gentlemen. And you know how you have a memory when you're young and then you're like, holy shit, but you don't have a context for understanding and you kind of suppress it. Like, that was weird. She made me remember in 2000, I think it was 2001 or 2002. um I went out, I was just turning the age where I could get accepted to clubs and shit. So me and one of my white friends, I had a car. He's like, hey, Big Al, can drive, let's go to Atlanta to a rave. Those of you old enough, y'all remember raves. Well, there was a rave in an abandoned church in Atlanta, and it was like the rave party of the century or whatever. And we went, to meet some girls and shit. And we went to the rave, and I was talking to some girls. He's out there partying and doing drugs and shit. But I got me a drink. I was sipping on me a drink, and I was talking to me some honeys under the steps. Like it was a bartender under the steps of the old abandoned church. Number one, I
Me
felt
too.
weird. I
Yeah.
felt I felt kind of weird walking in a church to party and shit. That was odd. But I met me some ladies, and I'm sitting up under these, listening to this shit. I'm sitting up under the stairs by the bartender, talking to this girl, and her friend showed up. So I'm talking to these girls, having a great time. And all of a sudden, out the blue, something told me to leave. And I went and got my friend. He had popped some ecstasy and shit, and he was feeling good. He did not want to leave. I was like, man, let's fucking go. I'm going home. You know what I'm saying? We lived in Birmingham. It's 120 miles away. I was a car, so he had no choice. Man, we got in a fight on the way home. Like, he's like, man, I was having a great time, Al. What the fuck? And I was like, man, I just gotta go, man. I don't know why I gotta go. That morning when I woke up, the fucking stairs that I was standing under, the old church collapsed,
Wow.
and the stairs I was standing over, all that shit was collapsed. So I don't know why I wanted to leave, but I left.
Go with your gut feeling.
No cap.
Yeah, I was just mentioning that, when they talk about Spider-Man and spider senses, they talking about black people because we have that ability.
Yeah.
And when we go out in the sun, we get energized.
Yeah.
Our vitamin D is replenished.
Housing, that is a reason, and that's one of my theories of education. That is one of the reasons why in school, what do? Keep your ass in a building.
Mm-hmm.
They know what they doing.
Mm-hmm.
Being inside is not our nature, but it is the nature of the European to be in an enclosed space because that is his ethnogenesis. Yeah.
I think Tariq was talking about, you know, uh, in the slavery days when black people was by the water, they threw the black people by the water and they flourished.
Hold that thought, House, and we coming back to you. That's an interesting topic. We're gonna go to Queen Kush and then Tether Whisperer. Go ahead, Queen.
I was at this point. I was just
I
enjoying the
had a phone
conversation
call.
at this point.
I had I had a phone call, but go ahead. I was gonna say, but I'll wait. Go ahead.
I was just enjoying the conversation. You know what's
Yeah,
interesting?
Ray.
Um,
No. Uh, I was on a space.
Oh, they got weird for a second. House, I know you got a phone call. Go ahead, Queen Kush. I'm sorry.
Okay, I was waiting for him to go ahead mute the mic. Interesting. Y'all were talking about black people by water and then moving black people away from water. So one thing about in Maryland, so I'll just say here, um, a lot of black people are from Southern Maryland, and my family in particular, my roots go back to Annapolis, Maryland. So a lot of these places are like water cities. So like Annapolis is not far from the water. Like a lot of the major cities are not far from water. But the thing is, they eventually moved for whatever reason. Black people ended up moving from like the water towns like Annapolis and places like that, and then they moved up to like Baltimore City. So that's kind of like what happened with my family. Like they from one particular county in Southern Maryland, but then for whatever reason, my great grandfather, after he fought in the Civil War, he ended up moving up to Baltimore City. So I do know that much. But the thing is, growing up, I'm not really near water like that, but we still have places where we have predominantly historically black parts of Baltimore City that are on the water. And we're watching those areas be gentrified, where they're trying to get black people away from the water. It is not just because it's prime property and people can make money off of it, but it's also whatever that point was, that us being next to water, us being outside, being in the sun, things like that, that really is conducive for us. But one of the other things, while they're trying to move black people out of the city or move them away from these water areas, and the same thing is happening in DC too, because you got like the Anacostia River and stuff like that down in DC, and they're trying to move black people out of these predominantly black areas in DC and PG County and whatever. they're moving us back out into the county or putting us in these Section 8 areas that are nowhere near water. But because they're doing a lot of development out there, we really still can't be outside because they're tearing down all of the trees. They're building up a whole bunch of houses and they got people stacked on top of each other or putting these houses so close together. So we really can't even enjoy outside in nature a certain type of way. Now, I will say this: we still got places out in Maryland where people can go and enjoy nature, and there's still some space out there. But a lot of near the metropolitan areas, they're definitely building it up in such a way we can't enjoy nature the way that we want to. So even with I think it was housing saying something about and it also you professor talking about the attempts to see my air quotes block out the sun and the benefits to us and what it would do. It's all around from the water to the sun to the see my air quote food that we consume. And all of this is not by coincidence. I'll say that, and I'll land my plane right there.
Queen Kush, what you said is so fascinating because my dad is well, my dad's family is from Virginia, but they grew up in the DC, Maryland area. And when my parents got a divorce, my dad moved to the Inner Harbor. This in the early 2000s. And the Inner Harbor, dad used to have an apartment. It was like cheap. You could afford it. Was a bunch of black people in you, but you know what happened to the Inner Harbor. That shit is no longer black. Um, and also, I don't know how old you are, Kush, but I'm an '80s baby, back in
Same.
yeah, you remember H2O, the club?
Yes, yes.
It was a
All them clubs that used to be down there in at the harbor and downtown. Yes.
yeah, the club in DC, the black club used to be called. I used to fucking love H2O, but it was a club called H2O on the ward. I think it was the Anacostia River. But yeah, they moving us away from that water. They don't want us there. Even that what's that place? Lake Lanier is like full of white folk. They live on Lake Lanier.
Aren't they supposed to be doing something else with I just saw something that they're trying to do with Lake Lanier. I just saw it. Oh my God, I cannot. And when, as soon as I saw it, I scrolled past it because I said, I don't know why people still playing about Lake Lanier. Um, but I'm going to have to go look
They
for it.
haven't drowned enough.
They haven't drowned enough.
Oh,
What's
when
the deal? The thing is haunted. What are they doing?
I'm going to see if I
Wait,
can find it.
let's get seventh up here. Seventh, do you feel that Lake Lanier is haunted or it's just a
Uh
coinkydink?
oh.
I got him now. I got him.
Man, must I go there?
Yes.
I, if when people drink, they get drunk, they on a boat, they do stupid things, their memory's impaired. So when they, so
Those
yeah,
people were not drunk. Some of those people were just on a boat.
well maybe they fell in and they panic and they didn't know how to swim.
It sounds like a lot of excuses on your part.
Yeah, excuses with
Hey,
science. Yeah, I get the scientific excuses. Okay,
I science
okay. Sue me.
you. Okay. Wait, you're breaking up, EJ.
EJ, you breaking up, bro?
they turned it into a water park.
Yeah, it's a water park there. It's craziness.
And something about it's supposed to be a resort. I just found something. It's supposed to water park and a resort and all of this. And what is really going
It's
on?
always been a resort.
Oh, okay.
You could always go up there and rent out cabins, ride horses. Um, it's always been that, but now it's actually like they've added a part to it where it's like a water park with all of these slides and all of that. They're really trying to make it an attraction.
The stories alone, I mean, not that I want to visit for the stories, but okay, Georgia.
Yeah, it's like thumbing. That sounds like Europeans thumbing their face and then thumbing their, in the face of supernatural. They got like a weird attitude of "I'm gonna show you," even if it kills them.
Their attitude is like they can't die.
Yeah,
Well,
They have
if they're
thrown
spirits,
themselves.
if they're evil spirits, can they die?
that's a good point. We
I
don't.
mean, people tell them that something is cursed. This has happened all over the place. and they ignore it, and then they die, and then their crew dies, and then the plane that comes to get them dies. Everybody dies, and then it stops, and it's just it's very strange.
Yeah.
Can I say, I'm sorry, can I say something right quick?
Yeah, go ahead.
While we're on this. So I'm laying here as we talking. I'm just, watching Ricky Bobby. I'm just listening to something in the background as we talking. And it's something that I thought was very interesting that I never really paid attention to in this movie until right now when he was doing the prayer at the table. If anybody's ever seen Ricky Bobby, and he was praying to sweet baby Jesus. And
Okay,
the
big black Jesus and black baby Jesus.
huh?
Black baby Jesus.
I don't think he was praying to the black baby Jesus. He was just praying to a baby Jesus in some fleece drawers, some golden fleece drawers. But he was just praying to baby Jesus. And at a point at the table, his sons started to talk disrespectful to the grandfather. And the little boy said, "I'm gonna kick your ass, granddad." And the other boy said, "Yeah, me too." And they going back and forth. And the grandfather says, "You going to let your boys talk to me like that? I'm their grandfather, and I think you're raising them wrong." And Ricky Bobby said, "I like how they're talking to you. They can talk to you how they want to because my sons are winners." And so, even though this is a comedy and whatever, I feel like when these people do these types of movies and things, they are infusing their culture and their thoughts and all of these things into these movies. And I do believe that a part of their arrogance is because in their minds, they believe they are winners. Even when they're losers, they're winners.
Well, that's where the concept of race came from, as Dr. Claude Anderson tells us. Race didn't exist before the transatlantic slave trade and its discovery of the New World, air quotes. Dr. Claude Anderson said race has always been a competition um, to steal free land and have slaves. And in a race, like a car race, you need winners and losers. So certain groups of people have been designated as the loser class. Foundational Black Americans have been designated as the loser class, which we've never been. We're the winners. Everything is backwards. But that was a very interesting observation. We're gonna go to Tether Whisperer, and then we're gonna go to Miss T. Go ahead, Tether Whisperer.
What's going on, Professor?
What's up, bro?
Nick, everybody in the room. Uh, what the sister Queen said earlier about Professor William Mackey, he's a genius when it comes down to the historical discrepancy of these people. And funny thing, his cousin is Clarence Thomas. And he broke that down in one of his videos. But to answer the question of the room, or Africans speaking out against FBA, I mean, when are they not speaking out against us, telling us that we hate them and we hate the white man, all those crazy things. And the England clearly define what a woman is, and I don't think they really did, because they like lady boys and all type of little
But
crazy things.
they just recently said that they're not going to acknowledge all those lady boys as women, even though they forgot to say the part where they had 800,000 pedophiles, admitted pedophiles. That's a lot of pedophiles.
So
Wow.
what they now?
Yeah,
They
yeah. To be official, the United Kingdom Supreme Court has ruled that a woman is defined by biological sex under the country's equity law. That equity law excludes transgender women. So they're saying in England that a transgender is no longer a woman.
so are they considered fun time boys, or
I don't know. It doesn't seem like fun.
so I really had a question. I know you said that the little desert people don't really do that anymore. They hide, they took out all they uh whorish women. I'm trying to find another way to say it. But so
It's
is that
okay. Just go ahead. We're not. It's all right. Go ahead.
why so is that why that, like, they prefer more animals than little boys? Cause I'm still trying to figure out, like, what's up with the big booty sheep that they be. like
Okay.
stolen the
They
land.
made them
Sheesh.
like that.
Yes, they kept
They
breeding
gave
them.
them all BBLs into the DNA, and it's not good.
Yeah, my
I think they kept breeding them like that. Because why, when
Yeah,
they're washing those sheets, we keep seeing these are not the same clips, and they're always massaging their butts. These they are nasty.
that's
They are
called
disgusting.
dating. That is called dating.
wow.
I
I,
call it
I,
cruelty to animals.
I want to
Yes.
call SPCA and tell them, hey, they doing foul things to these animals, and we can't put
Mhm.
lipstick on animals that they shouldn't be able to smack them butts like that.
Oh no.
Mm. Big.
Well, see, you have to see what trumps what because we have animal cruelty laws, but we have religious laws. So Santeria is
Yeah.
allowed to murder
That's
animals,
what I was
and
talking
people
Yeah,
about,
can't
I
Connie.
say
think
anything.
the way I interpret the First Amendment is you have a right to belief and a right to profession of your belief, free speech and stuff. You do not have a guaranteed right to practice because if your religion is taking child brides, which is allowed in Islam, are we really going to allow that shit? No, you don't have the right to
We did.
practice.
We
I
did.
mean, you have a right to free exercise. Free exercise means you allowed to freely do what you want as long as you don't encroach on another person's freedom.
But
Well,
So,
seventh, they
that
did.
people
They
eat.
didn't. For seventh, they did because they allowed a lot of African and Arab men to import their fiancés over, and they knew the fiancé was 10, and they didn't ask the age. So they're playing
I
games.
agree.
You
Yeah,
know
I
what I'm
agree it's
saying?
happening, but if we were going to make a logical argument before the courts to shut all that down, that would be the argument that I would make.
We need to start making that because these other people are coming over here with some cultural things that are against the law. It's culturally okay for them to marry an 8-year old, but that's against the law here.
Yeah, especially them red dot people.
And I also
Okay.
think I'm sorry. I'll be quiet.
No, I was gonna say, especially them people with the red dot on their forehead. Like when they husband die, they be expecting their wife to just hop on the bonfire with them and stuff. And I feel like that should be done in America.
Yeah, no.
Eating the bones of your family members and stuff. Like, no, I don't
That
think.
reminds me of that junk that's happening in the tech sector with the what was it? Wasn't the Hindus? They're taking over tech jobs and employing deploying a caste system in American jobs,
Yes.
and they're
On all of the jobs, not just one or not just one place. It's multiple places that they did
how
this.
are they getting away with that? You know, it's not
Because
American.
we're allowing them to have their own justice system.
Wow.
We're looking the
Yeah.
other way.
And I think the way we get around that is we need to start interpreting the Constitution in a context of text, history, and tradition. When if we go by that standard, these people weren't on anybody's mind, the frame of mind when the Constitution was written, and we get protections as FBAs because we have the 13th and 14th Amendment, which through text, history, and tradition applies exclusively to us and not to these people who came as afterthoughts. That's the argument I think we should make.
Thank you for calling it.
Professor, we was just talking about that. They come in here and they want to make the old. They just want to change the game in America, and the politicians is like so soft, and they allowing it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well.
No, they get paid to do it.
They get paid on the table, and let me another thing I want to pull your guys' coat on the immigrant. This one down there just got shipped, and it's Senator Duval, whatever his name, Don something. He went down there to supposedly visit him, but they have this GoFundMe, and they got over 1 million. They literally got people donating to this guy's family.
Wow.
Who to Abrego Garcia?
Yes, he got $200,000 right now.
They can use that money to go down and be there in El Salvador with them.
Now check it. It
Or
was
at
mentioned.
the
It was
Mexico.
it was mentioned that she was forced to say that she loves him and all that. It was, yeah. Yeah, like the team says, listen, you say what we tell you to say on the news, because she called the police on him. He was beaten up supposedly. But my thing is, you got a sitting senator went down there to El Salvador to visit supposedly a MS-13 criminal crossing over here illegally. That's criminal.
The Democrats have lost their minds.
Yeah,
Yeah,
They
and they
need to
call
be committed into a mental
now
institution
they talking about
collectively.
they're
right now.
done.
Listen, now they talking about they want to charge the senator with the Logo Act. It's called.
Wow.
You mean a
What's
This
Logan
that?
pretty,
Act?
yes, this pretty
Yeah, all of
this
that.
yes.
For what?
It ta- it only took it was created in the 1800s. It's when you uh American or a politician interact with a foreign uh I can't I can't put it in words, but what he's doing it's a crime. It's called a Logo Act.
Okay, great. I hope they charge him.
He could get fined up to 3 years in jail, they said.
Wow.
They
Well, we're
tried
gonna
to
go.
pull that on Trump.
Trump is the one pushing it.
I think
We're
he's
gonna.
on. I think he's out for revenge because they tried to use it on him.
Yeah, because they was talking about when he went and talked to Putin. But go ahead, Professor.
Oh yeah, I was gonna say we're going to Rod Whip, but he dropped down. So I think Miss T was up. Miss T, you had something to comment on? You there, Miss T? Hey.
Hey, what's up, Wani? What's up, Nikki? And shout out to the rest of the family in the room. Um,
Peace.
Happy Resurrection Weekend. And I wanted to address the question of the room: are Africans speaking out against FBA? Absolutely, of course. They've always had a hatred for us, and that's evident in the selling of people. Um, Many of our ancestors who were sold in the transatlantic slave trade, they deemed to be unworthy to keep, right? So, yeah, and it's no big deal, it's no big whoop. Um, they haven't done anything. There's no African over here who has created any industry that is employing us, where we are working for them, or anything. They're not building anything here. They just come over here to get jobs. So they don't affect us at all. But speaking against us, yeah, we got to start slapping them around and shutting them up. And I like what England did. Um, they defined what a woman was for England. We still got dumbasses over here who are being paid by these globalists, people pushing their global agenda, and they are using the Democratic Party. In my opinion, the Democratic Party saw that the Black Americans were no longer their party. We weren't voting for them, and they decided, um, when Trump won in 2016, that they would begin to ramp up. I think they have been wanting to replace us as their um, party, um, for a while. But I think when Trump won, they decided that if they got back into office, they were going to ramp up the replacement of the Black vote. And they began to allow the border to be open, and they put these people in major Black cities, um, to drown out that Black vote in those cities. And that their whole intention was to give them amnesty like Reagan did in the 80s, which would allow them to be American citizens and would allow them to vote. And they that way they would have replaced the Black American as their voter base, and they would have created a new voter base with the illegals. So that's what I'm thinking. It's all this globalist and APAC paying the Democrats. And I'm glad that my people are waking up and seeing it for what it is. Yeah, they were trying to replace us as a vote.
Elon Musk said that he had a big interview before during the Kamala Harris administration when she's running against Harris, whatever the dude she was. I forgot the dude's name she was running with when they were running against Trump. Elon said that he jumped in this because Elon said he used to be a Democrat. And he said he saw the plan. He said the Democratic Party was focusing heavy on swing states such as Ohio. And their plan was to get Kamala in, and Kamala was going to flood Ohio full of Democratic immigrants. And Elon's thesis was once Ohio was swung to the Democratic Party, there would have never been another Republican administration. It would always be Democrat from now on, and this country would have fell the fuck apart.
No, I just wanted to say their plan to bring in immigrants, that doesn't work. They're not smart. They don't know how immigrants think. They think that immigrants are grateful and they're going to come across the border and say, the Democrats helped us. So we're going to. No, no, no. They're not humanitarians. So they don't want others to come over. They're only interested in their asses getting over the border. Plus, all of these immigrants split their vote. They're not reliable voters. Latinos don't all vote the same way, neither do Asians, neither do Arabs. So they don't have that kind of vote. So the whole thing was a flawed plan to begin with. They should have looked at the polls. The polls tell you that these people come over here and they vote, they split their votes. They
Facts.
don't have one big voting block, so their vote is worthless. Everybody's vote is worthless in this country, especially white people, because they split their vote.
That's a fact. Go ahead.
So, Wani, we the only ones that vote Democrat, supposedly.
You
But if we shift when it's very even like it was, and we have low voter turnout, and we shift slightly to the right, that's the end of them. They're over. We don't need everybody to vote Republican to get rid of them. We have
Just as
enough. We have enough. Just with a few people shifting over and people not being impressed by either side, that's enough to throw it out the window
got you,
for the Democrats.
go,
got
go
you.
ahead, Queen Kush, then Fire Nagy.
Something that I think it was Housing said that made me and this is not whole soul on topic, but it made me think about what he was saying about Chris Van Hollen going over there. So it's not just Chris Van Hollen, it's also another Maryland House of Representative individual that's also trying to go over to El Salvador too. So it's not just one or two elected Maryland politicians. These Democrats are like, oh no, we're going to stand 10 toes down on supporting non-citizens. But something that I thought about earlier today, I did not see the same level of energy when it came down to dual U.S. Saudi Arabian citizen Jamal Khashoggi. And some of y'all may or may not remember that man, but he was a dual U.S. Saudi Arabian citizen who ended up murdered some
I
type of
do.
way. Okay, Professor, so I'm not going to go into a whole hell of a lot of detail about it, but that man ended up murdered. He went into, I believe it was a Turkish embassy alive, and the man came out deceased and chopped up in little pieces. And the thing about it, I do not remember, and I can't remember under which administration this happened. And I want to say it was under a Democrat
Biden.
administration. I could.
Biden.
Okay. Okay. And it was interesting because the way the Democrat stance was, from what I recall, was a lot of, well, if the crown prince would like to share some information, we'll take it. Well, if Recep Tayyip Erdogan want to share something, we'll take the information. That man was a dual U.S. Saudi Arabian citizen. Nobody was flying to Saudi Arabia. Nobody was demanding to speak to the crown prince, because one thing for certain and two things for sure about the crown prince: he is a young man who has a quiet voice, but he walked with a big stick. He made it very clear, whatever they was doing under King Abdullah, you're not going to play games with him. So I noticed that the Democrats, they took a different stance with that. Then this was a dual U.S. Saudi Arabian citizen. That man was a U.S. citizen. And it was like, are y'all going to get to the bottom of what happened to him? No. But when it comes to this Kilmar Brago Garcia individual, who is a non-citizen, who was an illegal alien resident for over 10 years in the state of Maryland, now all of a sudden, oh, we need to go find out how he doing. And I am hot that my taxpayer dollars is going towards this. Y'all may or may not care. I just wanted to get that off my chest. I'm
Do
going to
you
yield the
think it's
mic and
because
thank you.
do you think it's because they're trying to impress Latinos?
I think at this point in time, and I'm gonna just say this is straight across the board with the Democrats. They know that they don't really have a chance come midterm, and they are standing 10 toes down on. If you notice, they've backed completely away from the GLB plus community stuff. We don't hear them talking a lot about that.
Really?
They're leaning, in my opinion, it seems that they're leaning heavily into this immigration stuff, and they're leaning heavily in supporting non-citizens. Like they're just leaning heavily into that. And they're not reading the room at all. And I'm just saying this as a person living in Maryland, having to deal with not just Chris Van Hollen, Angela also Brooks, but Wes Moore, all of them, a gung ho, Brandon Scott, all of them. Like I'm just in blue no matter who country. And these people are going 10 toes down every time I turn around and look. These people are supporting non citizens left and right. I don't think it's about impressing these people. I think they just are on board with whatever the mission is, whatever the code is. And they're going to fall, they're going to die on that hill. That's what it seems like to me. They're going to die on that hill. I don't think it's about at this point, I don't think it's about impressing nobody. It's just about this is the mission, and we willing to die on this hill. And another thing that I want to say about it, I don't know if y'all saw, but George Clooney and it's some other man, they started putting in their words about how who they're supporting for the Democrats and whatever, and possibly presidential nominees for 2028. And they threw in Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez as a person that they think, and they threw Wes Moore. George Clooney said he would like to see Wes Moore. He supports Wes Moore as president. So I think some of what we are seeing going on is them trying to just drum up some energy for the midterms next year, but also going further into the presidential election.
Wow, I'm still confused. I mean, I'm listening to what you're saying. I've had a long history of looking at them making bonehead choices out here, and now I just don't, I can't figure out their mission at all. But thanks for updating us about your area. I don't know what the mission is. I'm just lost on their mission.
Me too. Go ahead, Fire Nation.
Same here.
Good afternoon or good evening to the room. I think I let me kind of say this. When I was going to school, UMKC, University of Missouri, Kansas City, I had a professor who's a very bright guy, brilliant, and he brought up, I was it Proposition 50, something that happened in California when all these Latinos came out one time and they voted it down because it was going to harm them. And he and I kind of went back and forth in class, and I was in my 20s, and I said, "Hey, look, you can't expect Latinos, people who come from another country, to fight like people like Black Americans have and did, because they're not coming here for that same purpose." And I think what's happened is the Democrats live in an ivory tower, and they're too academically focused, and I think their leadership is too academic. By that I mean their leadership isn't blue collar. It's not from the bottom up. Their leadership is all Yale, Harvard, and then what's happened is we've kind of met them with a bit of prestige and a bit of awe. It's a lot of immigrants too, and I think that they believe that they can kind of steer the nation in the way that they think they can, and I think a lot of it is that they think that they can coalesce. I don't believe this is Latinos. I believe because most of the people who are here illegally are Hispanics. I believe that they believe they can, get the Hispanic community on their side. But the fatal flaw in that is Hispanics don't even work together in Central America or in Latin America more broadly. I mean, there are 17 Hispanic, countries. You look at the United States; it's powerful, but it's powerful and it's centered within Black American culture. And I also think that they also have this feeling of that's why Wes Moore, I believe he's of Caribbean descent. If I'm wrong, does anybody know Wes
Yeah,
Moore,
yeah.
Um,
Caribbean?
we think he might be half FBA. His father might be half FBA, but on his mother's side, yes, she's Caribbean. I think the grandfather was Cuban, and somebody else was Jamaican. So yeah, I think he's at least half Caribbean.
He's a
Yes.
tether at the end of the day.
Yeah. So they tried to like kind of control us with this immigrant class, and now that we see the immigrant class is there and it's visible and it undermines us. They're gonna keep doubling down. I don't really think that they're gonna change course. They're not really listening to people like this. What they're trying to do is they're trying to say you're Russian bots, you're a hate group. They've been saying this Russian bot thing for like 6 years now, 6 or 7 years now. They've not stopped. They keep saying it over and over. And they're
Russia did that.
intellectuals. Yeah, the intellectuals within the Democratic Party just keep thinking that if they yell enough at Black Americans are getting placed because Black Americans, when you consider us, we are essentially a nation within a nation. We are a group that could actually, if the country fell apart, we could easily reconstitute another country. Now, get to the question at hand: Are Africans speaking out against FBA children? Of course they are. I mean, I don't think that's ever going to stop. I think Africans are in a cold war against us, and we need to actually get our shit together and take it seriously. We hold this virtue of kindness and humanity good, and that's all well and great. But Black Americans have to realize that we're on top of the human food chain, and because we're on top of the human food chain, we have many enemies. I'll give you an example. A lion has lots of enemies, and everything in the Serengeti tries to kill lion cubs, hyenas, wild dogs, everything. Nothing tries to kill mice. Or, I'm sorry, everything eats mice, but mice don't kill anything because mice are prey. And so Africans are prey in the human hierarchy. Okay, they have no enemies because they're prey. If you want something from an African, you go take it. Okay, if you want something from a Black American, you have to fight for it. You have to take it from our cold dead bodies. We will always have enemies as long as we exist. This is I'm trying to explain this to people because I love the passion of humanitarianism and things like that, but we have to get into a militarized mindset, and we have to understand that Hispanics are going to fight us, Africans are going to fight us. As long as this republic exists, we are going to be in some type of struggle, existential, external, or internal. We're too strong of a group to basically be ignored. Okay, it would be unwise for a group to not challenge us. Okay, why do you think there's so much? Even if you have relatives who fought in war, a lot of the propaganda in the Korean War and in the Vietnamese War was geared toward Black Americans. If the Chinese were saying if we could just get the Black Americans, the 600,000 Black Americans, to demobilize in the Korean War, we might have a chance of winning this. If we can just get the Black Americans to stop fighting in Vietnam, we might have a chance of getting the Americans to withdraw because there was a lot of pushback in those war efforts. Now, look at how we are in North America. The white people, they outnumber us and they have more money than us, so we're a pretty good second in North America. This is a continent we're talking about. Okay, Africans, outnumber everybody, particularly sub-Saharan Africans in the continent of Africa, and they can't even beat small groups of Indians or Chinese people. So we will always have enemies. This is not going to change, people. Um, that's all I say, and I'm going to yield the floor on that. So have a nice night.
Yeah, that's
You,
a good. Go ahead, Wani.
I was just gonna say thank you.
Oh yeah, he's exactly right. And what Farnaghi said goes back to what Claude Anderson said. Claude Anderson, and I'm paraphrasing, I'm away from my book, but Claude Anderson said that African tribal chiefs turn on each other. So they're reaping the sins of their fathers. And they've divided themselves into a situation where they're economic prey. I like that term of art, Fire Nagy. They're economic prey. They are. People prey on them. They want something, they go take it from Africa. Africans have put themselves in a position, and in particular, I'm talking about West Africans, but I don't know of a place in Africa this doesn't apply. But they put themselves in an economic position where they don't have bargaining power. Um, well, they do have bargaining power, but they're not defended. Dr. John Henry Clark said Africans need, back when Dr. Clark was defending Africa, he said they need to learn military science. Duh. Now back to Black Americans, you're right. We're a force to be reckoned with. One of the most dangerous things that hit us was the psychological warfare of turn the other cheek, which Bobby Hemmett said was not in the original Bible. Bobby Hemmett argues that Europeans put that shit in there as a warfare, a psychological warfare. I'm not going to touch that, but that's just what Bobby Hemmett said. But the whole ideology of turning the other cheek fucking damaged us bad, because for a couple years I taught physics. And physics, ladies and gentlemen, is the most important class for Black Americans to learn, and it's not in our schools. But physics is, I think, is a class that's most associated with the Creator, God, the universe, Allah Subhanahu wa Taala, or whatever you want to call it. Why? Because physics talks about the universe, and in physics, for every action, there's an equal or opposite reaction. That's just the way God set things up. That's just the way it is. So if somebody comes keeping that ideology, that law of physics in mind, somebody came to my home church in the 60s and threw some dynamite through a window and killed 4 little girls and severely injured and decapacitated one little girl. There needs to be an opposite reaction. Dr. King realized this at the end when he said, "Have I led my people into a burning house?" That's what he was talking about. I made an error in teaching my people on nonviolence, because there's a time and place for everything. We're gonna go ahead and go to. I just let somebody up. I don't have my glasses on. Independent, I think that says. Go ahead, Independent.
Hi, sorry about the hand. I'm on my computer, so I
Oh, you're
know it's
good.
I always make sure I make that point. Someone had well, to the question, yes, in the room, but someone had brought up what is the motivation behind the Democrats doing what they are doing right now. Well, okay, I think they do have a motivation. First things first, they are being paid to do what they're doing right now. They sold out uh themselves right around 2018, and it will continue. Right, this is um, a sinister plan on behalf of Democrats in order to support uh, illegal immigrant populations uh, in the Southern American hemisphere. Okay, and that they're not going to move from that. Their thoughts is we got to replace our voters, right? They do believe that for some reason, if they get these people over here, that they're going to vote at least in masse for them. Now that doesn't, as it was, I think Wani has said, that doesn't mean that because they get here they're going to vote for them in masse, but they believe if they hand them resources that should go to us, that they're going to vote in that masse for them. That's a weird belief, but it's true. The other thing that they're planning on doing is that they're going to rig the game, which is called ranked choice voting, right? They plan on going and sweeping through states that allow for changes inside of the state constitutions. In some states, if they can get the number of signatures required to do that. In other states, they plan on trying to do a voter initiative to get it on the ballot. So, ranked choice voting, they're hoping will dilute the votes foundational Black Americans who have a mind, right, that know that what they're selling is just straight hogwash. They also equally want to dilute the vote of the other side, the Caucasians. So they're hoping with ranked choice that they can just cheat their way, in so many words, to get back in power. So, one thing I would tell people in the room that are listening, because you will see these voter initiatives and constitutional initiatives come in your state soon, is that you have to realize ranked choice voting, it does nothing for us. It is nothing to help us. It is nothing. It's going to hinder us. And do not be fooled. They do have a 10 to 15-year plan, and this is a part of it. Ranked choice, and also bringing up, for some strange reason, South American illegals. So with that, I'll give up the
Thank
mic.
you. We were able to work out that they are being paid by globalists to do this, to flood us. And these globalists are doing this all over the world, but it still makes no sense. Um, they are cheating because during the election, I saw multiple instances of cheating, but they didn't investigate it very much because the GOP won, so they didn't have to. But they were trying to cheat. They have been trying to get people to vote with no ID, making crazy statements saying that women don't have ID was one of the last statements. Women, not just black women, all women have no ID according to Jasmine Crockett. So they are saying a lot of crazy things and they look insane. I don't know what is happening with these individuals, but they're not going to run up on me and tell me anything. I would never vote for them. There's nothing they can do. I'm glad they got off the LGBTQ, but I'm still never going to vote for them. No. Once you do something that horrible, what they did to children with those um, sex change hormones and removing people's breasts, once you do that, you're trying to institutionalize child abuse and all kinds of deviance. They can't be trusted anymore because whatever's going on with them, they're being paid to do it. And once you get paid that hard, um, that's too much. I know they're all politicians are paid to do what they're doing, and we should be trying to get rid of that as well. But at this point, they're all being paid, but they have tried to institutionalize perversions on children, so they can't be forgiven for that.
And yeah, and if I can just say this, they have basically deep dived deep into immorality and just plain just disgustingness, right? And they're fine with it. I mean, if they had the opportunity to do the things that you know right now, they would have continued to continue pushing the immorality of our children by any force and means and operations necessary in order to do it. That's why they can never be in power again. That's just my strong opinion. I don't know how people feel in the room, but
I
that's just
have a same opinion. They must never be in power again, or else everybody is going down in flames.
Wani, I got a question to the people in
Yes.
the room. If Trump finds a way to go at it a third time, you think he could pull it off?
You mean hold the office against I think if he's doing a good job, he'll be able to do it, but I hope that um someone will carry this on because this needs to be carried on until this other side withers on the vine. They can't be in power. They are not responsible at all.
Gotcha.
Yeah, the leadership of the Democratic Party has been opposite of morality. Like a gentleman said earlier, black people are the voice of morality in the whole world. So um, we just can't support what we've seen from that party. Um, in a lot of ways, ladies and gentlemen, and I'm not a political person. I don't have a political side, so don't get that impression. But I mean, I don't root for a political side. But looking at the facts as I know them, the last Democratic Party leadership um, has been anti-life. I mean, you look at it's been they've been in support of your right to kill an unborn child. I mean, the ideology is dangerous in my opinion. What are your thoughts, Kush?
You know what I was thinking about, and I think about this all the time. Living in the United States, we're kind of living in Rome 2.0, at the lowest point of Rome, right before its fall, and we're talking about the immorality and things like that. That we're seeing in the United States. All of this happened before Rome fell. Another thing that we're looking at with the economy and some of the things that Donald Trump is trying to do as it relates to the economy and things like that is interesting to me. What I This is just how I feel about it. I'm no expert on this, but I feel like the Democrats used or the liberals, the Democrats and people of like mind used that GLB plus community. And I always leave off everything else, those other letters, because I feel like that community, those individuals who identified as homosexuals and bisexuals, those individuals were not pushing where we had to accept their lifestyle. They were not pushing certain things on children. They weren't pushing certain lifestyles in schools. They weren't doing certain things. It was only until after 2008, when there was a certain individual elected to the White House, that we start seeing this change and
What's his name?
all these extra letters and
Say his
That's a
name,
fact.
Obama.
Obama.
uh,
Obama.
hey,
Oh,
listen.
was my mic on?
Hey, listen, hey, the family is calling response. I say his name. Y'all said his name. Listen, everything understood. We know who it was. And when that person came in, and that's when we saw the extra letters coming in. And then from there began the creep of, well, children, and what about your pronouns? And it just crept and it kept creeping and it kept creeping. Then the next creep was these non-citizens and these immigrants, legal or illegal. At first, it started off with legal immigrants. And well, what about the DACA? What about the kids who were born to? It was always a creep. After 2008, everything turned into a creep. At first, we cared about the children of illegal migrants. Well, they were born here. Well, they're citizens. Fast forward, now we're talking about the rights of non citizens. How the hell did we get to there? All of these things, in my opinion, were a distraction from the fact that they kept funneling money to non citizens and trying to tell people that our economy is doing well and financially we're doing great. And everybody's going, how? When my pockets are thin. Because they kept funneling money to all of these places. And now that we see my air quotes correction that Donald Trump is trying to do, he's trying to do a correction because there was major distractions and major creeps. And so if you think about from 2008 all the way up to 2024, 2025 timeframe, that's a long time. That's over 10 years. That's 15 years. 15 years that this has been going on. And I guarantee you, nobody's paid attention to that creep. And when I say creep, I'm not talking about a person. I'm just talking about the ideology and the things that we have seen being allowed happen in this country. So to the person's point about, do I think that Donald Trump could do a third term? For the sake of the fact that this man is not a young man, I wouldn't doubt if he would go a third term. I think Donald Trump would keep going until he died in office, to be honest. Because I believe he believes in what he's doing. But for the
Listen, Donald Trump, not to cut you off, right? Donald Trump is practicing bringing the money back to America at the end of the day. Joe Biden and his team was pushing all the money out, selling America right down the pipeline. All the funds and everything they was feeding all these countries. Why is it that in Afghanistan you got a $22, a 22 million, I mean, 22 million dollar post that nobody's operating in? Where's that 22 million going?
But what about the transgender mice they made? That's the one they can never live down.
Yes.
because
Transgender mice, I
because
say.
That's transgenic mice, ma'am. That there is a difference
I
now.
like to say transgender mice, though, okay? It's called being a
No, but
propagandist.
transgenic mice, that actually is legitimate research and has benefits.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah. Trump's an idiot. He doesn't know the difference. Someone told him who's probably an
Hmm.
idiot too,
Hmm.
doesn't know the
I
difference.
like saying idiotic statements for fun.
Yeah, but no, transgenic mice is what that does is you put human genes into a mice, and then you can see how, certain therapies on diseases would work. So that's actually a good thing.
I heard they were changing the sexes of stuff.
Well, I want to say this: the U.S. Its morality has nothing to do with its success. It's always been an immoral nation. Think about what it did to our ancestors in the beginning of its inceptions. Um, we will always dominate North America. We will always dominate the Caribbean, and we will likely always dominate this hemisphere because the other countries in this hemisphere are just not organized. So, reports of our demise, or I believe, are greatly exaggerated. Rome was in the middle of one of the worst neighborhoods in human history. It was near the Mongols, the Ottomans, the emergent Russians, the emergent, Germanic tribes, and the Gauls. Uh, our neighborhood is pretty much we can kick everybody's ass, and I just want to add that to the conversation.
I need to say that a mouse model was used to test the side effects of gender affirming hormone therapy on HIV vaccine induced immune responses. Lots of things were done with mice for some reason. Um, Hormone therapies. So, yes, they were doing something with mice and genders. And they were also giving college educations to a bunch of random Egyptians in Egypt. If we go through this list of things that they were throwing money away on, why not give college education to Americans? Eh, Why are we giving it to Egyptians? What's happening? What are we missing?
Wani,
Yes.
$227 million for 2 weeks they was giving immigrants to New York. Every
What?
2 weeks. Every 2 weeks. 220 something $1 million. Let that sink in, people.
Well, Biden fucked up the dollar by invading Ukraine, which was none of our, and he played with nuclear war. Um, where are we? Like less than a minute to midnight on the nuclear clock. That was none of our fucking business. We invade how many countries every year? Um, you know what I'm saying? But my point is, Biden and all his genius, when he took the military out of Afghanistan, thereby getting so many people murdered, he should have left a special forces detachment. The way when you withdraw from a active war zone, you leave elements there. You slowly withdraw. When we withdrew from Vietnam, I think was it the Marines that stayed? The Marines were the last to leave. You leave some type of security element there to protect people because people you had informants, you had interpreters, you had whole families of people who were working with the U.S. government. You had people washing clothes and stuff. And we left in a vacuum, left a vacuum, and had all them people assassinated. I'm not caping for the people, although I am a humanitarian. What I'm saying, I'm looking at public perception. Public perception is the key to warfare. If people perceive you to be strong, they're gonna leave you the fuck alone. If people perceive you to be weak, they're gonna attack, right? So what Biden did in Afghanistan was weak. When he left Afghanistan and start supporting the war in Ukraine, he made another dumbass error. He canceled the billions of dollars that the Russians had in U.S. currency. He thought that he was going to stick it to Putin because Putin wasn't listening and wouldn't leave Ukraine alone, which Ukrainians are ethnically Russian. That's none of our goddamn business. Like Sly Stone said, that shit was a family affair. You understand me? It wasn't none of our goddamn business. Well, when Biden canceled that Ukraine canceled the Russians billions of dollars, hundreds of billions of dollars, the world was watching. China saw that shit. Brazil saw that shit. Russia, of course, India, and Saudi Arabia said, wait a minute. If the U.S. is just going to make Russia's money, hard earned money, null and void, or stolen money, whatever, null and void, what's stopping them from doing it to us? And that action right there created the momentum that has created the fucking BRICS currency. BRICS currency is the beginning of the end of the United States economy.
Yeah, but
Prof-
dollar-based transactions actually increased.
I put the transgender mice story up in the Jumbotron. So, could somebody read it to make sure that they are making these and that they should not make any more transgender mice?
and put Lazinski up there too with him cross dressing.
Oh boy.
Yeah, put that up there.
I don't see it, Wani. Hold on one second. I don't see it.
Mace.house.gov.
Mm-mm. I see it.
It
It's
was,
the space for it. Does somebody else see it, or is my thing acting up again?
It might
I
be
went
delayed.
I went into the pill. I can see it now in the jumbotron, but I just went straight to the pill to see it. But it
Okay.
was blank at first. But if you go on the pill, you can see it too.
Okay. Okay.
Bill Gates, professor.
I just want to make sure that I did not read it wrong. They did a bunch of things, but what Seventh was saying, they did
You
say
read it right.
what did you say? Genic? Transgenic?
Yeah, transgenic mice, but
Mm-hmm.
I don't see any studies saying they were doing this. I mean, but yeah, transgenic, where they put human genes in other animals so that we could test them to see how they react
But you
to
see
certain
this,
therapies on
Oh,
diseases.
but you see
seven.
this article.
Y'all might be talking about two separate things because the article Wani put in there said transgender.
yeah, because I saw that same thing, like the USAID thing. Yeah, she's not making that up. We all saw it in the group chat a long time ago.
$10 million in taxpayers' money has spent creating transgender animals.
Wow.
And it said
Animals.
and it said something about poison puppies. Where are the people that were mad at Michael Vick? Because
Right.
you're poisoning puppies. You lost me right there. The mice I could, but the puppies is a bridge too far for me.
Not the
Right.
puppies.
They
A
do a
bridge.
lot of things like that. And it's selective, just like when they ruled that it's okay to slaughter animals because immigrants want to slaughter animals. Where's PETA? Where's all the people that hate Michael Vick? Where's all those same people when somebody rapes their dog? Where's that mob when a woman gets on there and says I cheated on my boyfriend with his dog? Where's that angry mob?
It's all focused on Black Americans. Now, ladies and gentlemen, back to our discussion yesterday. Um, what Mr. Freedom was talking about. When you're dealing with, hmm, I think we're looking at another agenda. I'm gonna speak kind of cryptic a bit. Certain deities that are said to be very evil. Um, well, one deity has both genders, you know. So I wonder who's really behind all of this.
Baphomet?
Yeah, buddy. Like this.
Oh, you
This is
said
interesting.
Obama?
Yes,
Nah,
Obama.
deities. Well, I'm saying the
Obama.
ultimate.
Obama.
No, I'm not saying Obama. I'm
Oh,
saying, well, I
Baphomet.
mean,
Oh, Baphomet.
yeah, I'm saying this is all this stuff looks like a Luciferian agenda to me. That's what it looks like.
They said, Professor, 2.5 years ago, a, a cook in Obama's house up there in Martha's Vineyard. Have you ever been up there?
No, I used to go to school in Cambridge. I always missed the
Well,
trips when people went there.
it's a beautiful place.
I heard.
I went up there a few times. That's when my brother got thrown off a boat and learned how to swim.
Jeez.
Yeah, he never took us. Listen, my grandmother's husband I didn't like him at all. He never took me up there. He never took me and my younger brothers. But anyway, as I got older, I went up there. You know what I'm saying? I didn't fly up there. I could have had the opportunity to fly up there in a jet, but my son, I let him fly up. But anyway, it's like 4 hours from out of New York. But
Yeah, because
anyway,
Boston
you
is
know,
5 hours. It makes
yeah.
sense.
But that's the stomping grounds for the elite Black Americans.
Wow.
Yes, since the '60s. But anyway, it was this guy. I think he was a cook, and They said he was an excellent swimmer, and he drowned in 4 feet of water. How's that?
Because Obama and them pushed him in.
No,
Yeah, I
I
he
mean,
heard.
opened
that's
that door.
alleged.
No,
I'm
the word
alleging that.
is, listen. The word is he opened that door. He he
Saw
opened
too
that door.
much.
He opened that door and seen my man. He was on his knees or getting bent over. They said if you hit, you must pitch.
Oh my God.
Oh my God.
Yeah,
Obama's
If
gonna
I
get
could,
us.
and they killed him. They killed him.
Yeah, I've heard alleged theories of and alleged testimonies of that cook seeing too much.
He
And
opened that door.
wow.
He was bringing him a soda or something, whatever. He said, "Oh my God, oh my God, I'm sorry.
Yep.
I'm sorry. No,
Damn.
don't worry about it. We
We
okay.
can fantasize about what he saw, right?
Listen, man.
Was a horse
Listen.
involved?
I don't know. I don't know. It was two things. Either
A dolphin?
either he was on his knees or his head was in a pillow.
Oh Lord.
I mean, let's call it like it is, man.
It could have been some straight demons walking around or some shit.
Yes. And now you got his wife doing this podcast. She's talking nonsense.
What is she talking about?
Nothing.
Her and Tracy Ellis talking about
Yeah, I
being
know it. I
50
seen
years.
that.
Yeah, I'm 50 years old and I prefer to date younger men because the older men my age are toxic.
Yeah.
All types of nonsense.
Huh?
Yeah.
What's the name blew him out? What's the name blew out the frame last night?
Oh Lord.
TBA.
yeah, TBA,
Oh, he
yeah,
tore he
TBA
tore her
on
a
the
new one.
business, yeah.
He tore her a new one last night.
I haven't seen it. I haven't seen it yet. I got to get to it. It's in the queue.
He tore a new one in her.
What happened?
Well,
He
you
was basically, he's basically, he was saying that, at her age, she probably need to look at somebody, as who's like 60 something years old.
and TBA said the people that's in her age is not bothered with her. She said you catch a couple of young boys listening to it because who she is. You know, but at the end of the day,
That's fucking predatory. These young men are starting to go with. Let me tell y'all what y'all looking at.
but
The-
Professor,
A
I'm
lot of
let you
these
talk.
a lot of these young men that are messing with older women, what you're not looking at a sexual attraction. You're looking at young men who didn't have a dad at home, and they're looking for leadership. They're looking for a mama. So this is like some type of child abuse, is what the fuck this is.
Yep.
Democratic Party. She's
Mhm.
part of it.
Oh
If
Lord.
she's on that podcast, and they also talking about her running for president 2028 too. It's just whispers.
I don't think
But I
she needs. She's always being put up, and she never runs.
no. But OKC, that's her name. The lady from the Bronx and
Mrs.
Queens.
I'm not black. And then the
Yeah.
next video, everyone's black.
No matter how much they push her, she's not gonna go nowhere.
Yeah, she's an implant. She has a documentary on a Netflix. I watched that shit, and I was like, man, she. I don't know where she came from, but she was selected. And this whole story of working at a bar as a bartender, being poor and broke, is bullshit. Somebody selected her. If she was a broke bartender, how did she pay for BU? Boston University is one of the most expensive. I think when I was in Cambridge, Boston University cost more than Harvard. How you pay that tuition?
You right, she's a
Unless
plant.
she was a
And
DEI.
and the only reason why she was a plant professor is the fact is she has she hates black people. Her job is to keep black people down.
Oh, yeah, it's something.
Whenever whenever they put people of color on TV, mainly blacks and Hispanics, and prop them up, they already been in that room and says, listen, you gotta hate the niggers.
That whole
All right,
squad
I
is a
got you.
hot mess.
I got you. Don't worry about it. I got you.
Who's that other squad member? She's Arab.
Elaine. Oh, I forget
The
her
one
name.
from
Rashida
Minnesota.
Tlaib. You're
The
talking
one,
about Rashida
No, not
Tlaib.
Yeah,
Ilhan.
Rashida Olive. Yeah, yeah, she's
oh, the
Arab.
Yeah,
Palestine one, the one that
Yeah.
the Palace, the heavy. I
Yeah.
forgot her
Is
name.
she
yeah, I know. Yeah, I actually know her because I'm from Michigan. Yeah, but Rashida Tlaib, that's who it is.
what type of husband does she have?
I don't.
Is he
She
white?
has a husband.
I'm just checking
That, yes,
too.
yes.
You know what? I'll be honest. I don't think I've never seen her with her husband.
I think she
So
does have a white man. I think her
yeah,
man is
I don't
white.
think I have ever seen her with her husband ever. No, I gotta think about it because I didn't know Rashida since
Who
what
could be
But the
married
other,
to
06,
that?
07. I have never seen her with her husband. I'm from Michigan, so yeah,
but
I've never seen her with her
Ronnie, the
husband.
other one you mentioned, she married her brother. I don't know what
And
kind of
then a
skin.
white man's. The brother was a stepping stone marriage.
Yes.
Wasn't that to keep him in the country? I thought Ilyan
I'm
did
just
that
kidding.
to keep him in the country.
Yeah, she did.
They were going to, which I would like to see the United States. I don't know if Donald Trump is going to do anything about that, but looking into these politicians that are demonstrating, well, this could possibly ruffle some feathers on both sides of the house, but these politicians that are showing a loyalty to these foreign countries, or they're vocally saying that they support foreign countries. Because I don't remember this back in the day. And again, I'm
It
old enough,
used
but
to be
also young enough.
illegal. The things that you're hearing people saying could put them on the end of a rope. And now we
In
get
other
these
countries, right,
Chinese,
Ronnie?
no, here. If we these Chinese spies that we have, they just slap them on the wrist and send them back to China. People got on the end of a rope. Go look up the Rosenbergs. People used to die for the things that they offhandedly do.
Yeah, we're out of control. Earlier, Kush brought up a point about Roman society, and I agree with that. I hear what you're saying, Fire Nagy. That's true, but we are following. If you graph it, we're following the same types of. You can graph an empire, the fall of an empire, like the death of a person. They follow the same goddamn patterns. And in late stage Roman Empire, what starts to happen when empires start to die is they start, number one, debauchery goes up, like Sodom and Gomorrah, or Rome. Caligula was at the end. Caligula was having fucking diddy parties and shit. Caligula had a diddy party so extreme that Caligula got his sister pregnant. Number one, and when she gave birth to his child, he brought his incest baby to the party, and the party ate the incest baby. I mean, that hell yeah, he ate his fucking incest daughter. Just
Yeah,
wild shit.
that guy was
They said he was crazy,
way
like
out.
he was really out of
It
his
had to be
mind.
the
Like,
lead
I don't think
poisoning.
so.
The lead
No,
poisoning.
no, Professor. I get your point, but my point is more geographic. Rome was in a bad neighborhood.
But
Um,
but but with the geographic, and I hear you, but what do you think about this? That's true. America's isolated, but in Rome they didn't have drones and hypersonic aircraft. Do hypersonic aircraft and drones kind of make
well,
the
well,
Atlantic Ocean a moot point?
I would say this that this is my opinion. Like we have two very weak neighbors, and Rome had strong neighbors. Um, uh, so I mean, Mexico and Canada, we could easily dispatch them. I mean, they're basically vassal states forever, from what I could see. In the Caribbean, um, I think they'd have to nuke us, and then all hell would break loose because we have nukes too.
Well,
Uh,
we're in another. What's happened? Let me help y'all out with something. What's happened is the military industrial complex has gotten tight lipped. They haven't told you about technology. You haven't heard about aircraft since the F-22 in the late 90s, early 2000. What they call them Gen 5 fighters now. We're all at a Gen 5 with fighter aircraft. And I'm saying that to say I'm gonna put one in the I'm gonna put it in the put a Gen 5 in the fucking Jumbotron. Gen fives can super cruise. Like what I'm trying to say, Fire Nagy, is the aircraft that we and the United States, China, Russia, I forgot what the Marines call it. Near. It's a term to say people that have near technology of us. We're in Gen 5. These fighters can.
They're near peers. They're called near peers.
It was another word the Marines said, but near. It's irrelevant. But yeah, we have fucking airplanes that can super cruise at high Mach. So that kind of it that eliminates the Atlantic Ocean as a protective barrier. Like people can be over here in a fucking hot second. You know what I'm saying? So does the Atlantic and Pacific even matter anymore?
Professor.
Well, in the context of like world history, I mean, oceans are just, I mean, in terms of like putting troops here, that's what you'd have to do. I mean, you got to put boots on the ground to really take over the United States, and everybody's got a gun. And and there are a lot of weaker nations like the U.S. If it starts to decline, I can see us going around the world snatching everybody else's resources. And who's going to do anything? We're in the era of great power politics. We can go to any part of this world and go beat up a small country and take their resources, and another country can't do much about it. So we can arrest our decline very easily. We can just start to say, "Hey, let's revert back to empire, and let's go take their resources." They can't do anything about it.
Well, Monroe started that with the Monroe Doctrine, which is kind of a catch-22 because that's why America's so powerful. Is because the Doctrine helped us expand our exploitive capabilities. All I'm saying is, China got some hot shit. Russia got some hot shit. And should we go to war, you're right. You have to put boots on the ground. But the magnitude of weapons we have now, you can wipe out a whole goddamn state with one warhead. So if we really
Hey,
want to go there, like,
Professor, we got nuclear submarines in the Pacific just sitting there.
Yes, lots of them.
Lots of them, Professor. And China noticed if it does go down, if war does go down, it will be over Thailand, Taiwan.
I don't know. I hope y'all are right. I was told otherwise.
They're thinking about invading in 2027.
War is going to go down in the next few years because China, they're so big and powerful right now. Did you see the Did you see
I,
the car they was
I
advert?
disagree.
Did you see the car they was advertising on TV?
Yeah, the Chinese market has a
Yeah, BYD. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
That car for $60,000.
Yeah,
If they allow that car over here, it would crush the car market.
well, they're not going to because they didn't allow. Huawei has some really interesting cell phone technology. When I last time I was in Africa, I saw some of Huawei's shit. It made iPhones look stupid. But what
Nah, actually, China is falling apart, y'all.
Yeah.
Huawei?
It's falling apart.
Hey, but I have a question, and this is for Wani. Wani,
What?
what's your take on that guy, Burkina Faso, the one that runs Burkina? What's your take on him?
I have a very dim view of things in Africa. They do, they have these little moments where they burst through and then
Right.
they eventually just sell out and turn in on each other. Like they did. What was that country where they kicked all the white farmers out and then they started begging them to
South
come back?
Africa,
Is
Zimbabwe.
Zimbabwe?
Zimbabwe.
What
But
was that?
but the only reason why the president died, that guy died.
And wasn't that around COVID time? Because wasn't that the guy who everybody was going to Zimbabwe because
No, it
they
was a
weren't
couple
looking?
of years before COVID, sis. I
Okay,
think.
but it was that the same president though.
His name starts with I forgot his name. He was
I
an
can't
older guy.
remember either. Okay, okay. I was just
Yeah,
wondering if it was the same person.
yeah,
But
housing. I've heard that G is probably going to push up the invasion of Taiwan. They say about 6 months because if the Chinese economy implodes because of they're an export driven economy.
right.
They're putting tariffs on soybeans. Like okay, you import 40% of your food. Plus the Chinese do have a 2-to-1 ship advantage over us. And historically speaking, no navy in the last 200 or 300 years has ever won a naval conflict when it has a shipping quantitative disadvantage. And
But
so they're
but we
saying
got
six
the air.
months.
We got the air. We take
Yeah,
the
but
air over.
we'd be in their backyard. I mean, I think that they have a pretty good surface to air missile tech.
Yeah.
And Joe Biden is an idiot. He basically went to war with Ukraine, and in doing so, the Russians got to learn about our tech. and the Russians are
Right.
sending the Chinese all our frequencies, all our HIMARS information. That technically is basically useless at this point now.
But we got other things. We got other things.
Well, the military, the United States industrial military complex that I used to kind of be a part of. Um, I've been to these conferences. Like we've invested heavily in kinetic warfare and aircraft and tanks and kinetic stuff. Well, China, as little well known, has invested in quantum physics. China is leading us in quantum in the quantum field, which is why I think we're about to be at a disadvantage. Let me give you an idea. China was able to quantumly project a molecule in space and in China on the land at the same time. In a minute, China's going to be into teleporting and shit like that. I had a guy from SEAL Team One tell me this is a long time ago, maybe 6 years ago. He said the Chinese have a submarine parked in the west. What do you call it? In the Pacific Ocean, and they have a sub parked in the Atlantic. And he says that these subs have a EMP weapon. That stands for electromagnetic pulse. Electromagnetic pulse will just make anything electric just die. Cars, cell phones, computers, energy grids just go down. And he said these two subs, if given, you know, given the order, will both detonate their EMP devices simultaneously. So an electromagnetic pulse wave will be coming from the west going east, and an electromagnetic wave will be coming from the east going west. He said those waves will cross each other in fucking Kansas, and every communication in America will be down. There will be no comms, and then there you go. That'll be the time to hit America. I'm not gonna say, I'm not talk on this too much because I don't want to say some shit I'm not supposed to say. But I worked. This was my area of operation for years, and you know, we got some really brilliant people working in this field. We're doing well,
Was you a
but
spy, Professor?
nah. I worked in compute and tech. I taught kids how to um program and ethically hack and all that stuff. That's what I worked. That's my area. But yeah, we're doing well. We got some really fucking brilliant people in the states and working with computers. I'm not so worried, but I'm just saying, there are areas of technology that China has that we're not focusing on. Y'all know this. We're not focusing on education in America. We're not focusing on science and quantum physics. We don't care about that. They
None of
do.
our
Yeah, I know a black
infrastructures,
guy who does
Professor.
research in quantum computing. Yeah, there's research going on.
But not on the same magnitude as Russia and China.
No,
Oh, it's
you're
bigger
underselling
than
it,
us. I
Professor.
mean, no, it's not
They
bigger than us. A lot of it's classified, but yeah, there's lots of research going on.
No, I mean I will totally disagree with you, 7-4, because that was my area of operation. I was responsible for Jackson, Tennessee to the Mississippi River, and I would try to recruit kids. We had programs that would pay everything. I had the hardest time recruiting American children to go into computer science. Like it was like pulling teeth. But I forget the statistics, but Russian kids and Chinese kids like outnumbered us. Now we're talking about Gen Z with respect to interest in going into computer science. They outnumbered us like fucking 10-1. Our kids were more interested, and I did these research myself. I hate this fact, but our kids were more interested in like YouTubing and like chilling, whereas Russian and Chinese children, according to statistics, were interested in computing. And I mean back then, I mean they hacked how many hospitals, like was it sent ransomware that was coming from kids in Russia. Yeah. So I'm not
Yeah,
trying to be a
but they're
fear
hacking
monger.
them too.
They're what?
The NSA is hacking them too,
Yeah, like
and
I
I
said,
and I hear they're listening to Putin's phone calls.
yeah, I got some of my colleagues from the total force community work for NSA. These motherfuckers brilliant as hell. I'm saying don't be scared because we got some of the best. But my concern is for the next generation, like the next generation, Gen Z coming up. it's been really hard recruiting those kids in the areas of computer science, and computer science is very popular in China and in Russia amongst Gen
And I
Z.
think, if I'm not wrong, I think China leads us, and I think 64 of the 61 critical fields or something like that. We used to be leading them. I couldn't remember the exact statistic, but they lead us in like we only lead like three of those fields.
And
They're. Oh, sorry.
no,
Go
no, I
ahead.
was gonna say the fucked up thing. Yeah, that's true. And the fucked up thing about China is China has a intellectual property theft apparatus that, like, their ability to steal shit is unmatched. So anything that, well, most things that we have breakthroughs in with respect to physics or computer science, like, they usually steal it. you know,
Well, well, didn't they
Yeah,
reverse
but they
engineer?
can't. Yeah,
Didn't they?
they can't steal computer chip technology. They can't make them. That's why they want to go in Taiwan to steal the stuff.
No, no, they're buying the components to buy it already. They've already bought the components to do the computer chip manufacturing. They did that behind our
How
back.
they don't have access to EUV technology. They've been cut off. That's
Right,
why
but
they're
they bought
mad.
it up. They bought it up secretly around the world before all that happened. Now, my concern isn't that we'll go to war in Taiwan. I don't think we will, because I think that'd be a fool's errand if we go to war over Taiwan.
be
You
suicide.
know, yeah, yeah, oh yeah, we have no chance. Like
It'd
the
be
American
Korean
military
War
can do
Part
it.
Two.
I disagree.
I think it'd be worse,
I
Professor.
think we wipe the floor with them.
How you'll be parked right off? We couldn't even. We don't manufacture enough ammunition right now. Like the Russians and out manufactured us in munitions in Ukraine. Like they out manufactured us and the EU. That was just the
That's not the
Russians.
reports
The
I'm getting
Chinese.
back.
The
Yeah, but
Chinese
we also
build.
have to remember that Joe Biden gave billions of our military weapons away.
Yeah, yes, and
Like
our
that happened.
capacity is already depleted. Um, the Chinese build like 41% of all new naval ships. We only build like 0.1%. Like we're not even
Most
close.
of their ships can't sail past 300 nautical miles.
They
They're
don't need them
Navy
to.
ships.
They don't need them to. We'll be right up
If
on
they
their
want to
border.
sail here to attack
That's
us,
not their intention. Their intention is just to retake Taiwan as a statement. That's all. That's their only intention. And if Japan gets involved in that, like they keep gassing Japan up, the Chinese have an old score to settle with the Japanese, an old score, and I believe they will settle it.
Is North Korea a factor that we care about or we don't care about once we get that in that
They
territory?
just got a big army. They're not a factor
Well,
militarily.
Well, yeah, it's a bunch of show.
that whole population is malnourished. They wouldn't last a day in a fight.
My, I'm
yeah, but
I'm not so much concerned with North Korea's ability to fight the American fighting machine, because the American fighting machine is outstanding right now. We're still outstanding, but what concerns me about North Korea is the nuclear weapons research that's going on there. They're getting better and better at nuclear weapons, and from a physics standpoint, there's been some concern of I heard physicists say the nuclear weapons that they're building at Trinity, when the atomic bomb was being built and those German fucking evil ass scientists were building a nuclear weapon, there was a probability, however small, I think it was less than 1%, of that nuclear weapon at Trinity, upon ignition, like lighting, becoming so hot so fast that it ignited the atmosphere, like just getting so hot just so quick the atmosphere doesn't have a chance to counter it, and just the oxygen in the fucking atmosphere getting just catching on fire, like the planet catching the fucking air and catching on fire. There was a risk of that, maybe 1% or maybe slightly less than 1%, but it was real. Well, the Koreans are developing nuclear technology, and then they're haphazard a little bit with their physics. So it's some concern that they will create a nuclear weapon that it detonates so fast that they will test it and fucking light the goddamn atmosphere on fire. That's what concerns me about Korea, is they don't know what they're doing. So
That's what I was thinking about was the nuclear technology. Like they're pretty quiet, but their nuclear technology does to some extent concern me.
I don't think they're gonna get a nuke over
So
here. I think they're gonna test some shit and fuck up the world.
right.
But have you seen, Professor, the new South Korean president or one of the nominees, because the other guy started having a coup. Well, the new guy, he's basically anti-American, and he wants a Korean unification. There's a lot of things going on around the world that we're not seeing or that's not being presented to us. And this guy is not necessarily going to be a U.S. ally.
Yeah, but he's going to fail. They tried that 25 years ago with the sunshine policy, and it was a train wreck. I don't see how history won't repeat itself.
Yeah, well, with respect to history, what concerns me in the global war arena is all across the world, we see a fight for land, a fight to take back former land. There's a fight for territory going on that people don't really talk about. Russia is trying to take back Ukraine. Ukraine used to be Russia, or they want
It's a
that back,
Russian knockoff.
right? The
Actually,
Chinese want.
actually, the Russians are a Ukrainian
Oh
knockoff.
no.
They're older. You the Russians trace their ancestry to the Ukrainians.
Ukraine didn't exist for over 100 years.
It was called Kievan Rus.
I
The
thought that was both
Ukrainians
of
are an
them.
Ukraine
older
Ukraine was
civilization.
partitioned out of the Russian Empire after the, I think, Molotov-Ribbon Treaty after World War One. Ukraine and Poland were just reconstituted 100 years ago.
Well, that's not that. None of that is my argument. My argument is world powers are fighting for territory, and that's becoming an issue. The Chinese are becoming very aggressive with They're building islands off the South China Sea. Like it's just becoming this aggression of I want this land, and America's trying to kind of expand. Guys, the real canary in the coal mine is what country has been neutral forever? Switzerland. A couple years ago, Switzerland joined NATO. That's a dangerous
They're they're they're
sign.
they're not a NATO member. You must mean
Uh,
Yeah,
Sweden.
Sweden, not yeah. What did I say? I said Switzerland, Sweden. Yeah.
Switzerland
Wanda,
is
you were saying say something.
no, I was gonna say Switzerland is very slick ass. They're trying to act neutral, but I
They
know I got
criminals,
some dirt on them.
They
real
were the
criminals.
Nazis, accountants, and bankers.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that's where the
Hmm.
Habsburgs came from. So they can't try to act like we don't have anything to do with those terrible monarchies. No,
Well, I
no,
never
no,
knew
no,
that.
no. I know I just found out. So they
Wow.
probably try to hide that. So the Kievan Rus, wasn't that Ukraine and Russia?
I don't
I
know.
thought it was a
I thought
yes,
Yeah, that's
Kiev
combo.
true.
was Russian.
Yeah, that's true.
yes.
But yeah, so yeah, that is true.
But Russia, but Ukraine and Poland ceased to exist after the Lithuanian Polish Commonwealth was absorbed, and the Russians blamed the Austro-Hungarians for promoting Ukrainianism because Ukraine simply means outlander, and they say because they had a rivalry with in the Balkans with the Austro-Hungarians. Keep in mind the Ottoman Empire, the Austro-Hungarian Empire, and the Russians are all fighting over the Balkans, and so they created all these ethnicities to fight and to destabilize each other while they fought for like 200 years over control of that. The Russians wanted to be the guarantors of Christianity in the Balkans. And they fought a Crimean War over that with the French and the British. The Ottomans basically were had parts of the Balkans, and then also the Austro-Hungarian Empire was in the Balkans. And so I agree with the Russians. That's really Russia. I mean, it's Greater Russia. It's always been Greater Russia. And it's basically they put their nukes in there because the Ukrainians were considered Russians for a long period of time. When they say half the Soviet General Council were Ukrainians, those Ukrainians never really made a big distinction between themselves and the Russians. And lastly, I think that we're arguing about Ukraine, but we're not looking at the deeper political implications of Ukraine. The western part of Ukraine has always been aligned with like Western Europe. The Germans, the German speaking part of Western Ukraine were SS troops and helped massacre large numbers of the USSR. And the Russians never forget that. But we do in America because we don't read history, we don't study it. That eastern part, the Donbass, and a lot of that, the Baltics, Lithuania, Estonia, Latvia, there's like hundreds, if not thousands, or millions of Russian-speaking people live there. But
Most
the
of those
United States,
Russians moved there during the Soviet time.
They were always there. They were always fighting
Correct. We're
and
always
exchanging
there. You're
land.
correct.
The
Yes.
A quick
majority of the ethnic Russians moved there during when it was part of the Soviet Union.
quick correction earlier. I said Switzerland. I didn't mean to say that. I was meant Sweden. Sweden joined NATO. I just slipped off my tongue. But
They joined?
yes, Sweden is NATO. And not long ago, see you see how the new we can't trust the main
Damn.
hell yeah. The main thing that we've learned on spaces is we can no longer trust this mainstream goddamn media. They kept that so quiet. I found out. I found under the radar that Sweden joined fucking NATO. That's a big
I
deal.
knew
That
about it.
well, you have a security clearance.
No, no,
No, Professor,
this was big
Professor.
news. This was big
That
news.
it was it
And
was it
then
was
Finland
yes.
joined.
It
Recently?
was
It
it
was
Yeah,
being
wasn't no
public.
secret,
You're
Professor.
correct. It's
No, it
it
wasn't
was
a secret.
actually
No.
March
it
Yeah.
wasn't a
17th.
secret. It just wasn't heavily advertised. Is what I'm saying.
Right.
Hey, Professor, can I get back to China? They built this huge city and nobody lives in it. Did you see that?
Yeah, I'm hearing a lot of fraud in China. I'm not sure of
yeah,
what
they
the
got a lot of ghost cities there from over construction.
Yes. Did you see that, Wani?
yeah, ladies and gentlemen, I was going to let y'all know that
No.
our brother Tariq is on, so we're going to go ahead and close the space. In conclusion, are Africans speaking out against FBA children? Yes, but who gives a fuck? Because they're constantly speaking out. They don't defend their own children. Look at the jumbotron. Take that information and do with it what you will. Do not let West Africans come into our spaces and say a goddamn thing about our child, our dear young brother Carmelo Anthony. Um, make sure before they talk about Anthony to remind them they're not protecting their own children. Did England clearly define woman? Yes, they said women are defined by birth at from a biological standpoint. I enjoyed y'all. Nikki, did you have any closing remarks before we go to Tariq Spade?
She's in the space already, Professor.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we're gonna reconvene on Tariq's page. In the jumbotron, you'll see Nikki the God's Cash App, Wani Spot's Cash App. Show them love. If you want to copy my book, go to Our Story Publications. Put $25 in your full address and zip, and I'll send you out a book in a couple days. I enjoyed y'all, and I'll see y'all tomorrow.